Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, series, and more.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode, where we're covering chapters 13 through 18 of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. But as always, before we dive into this episode, please listen closely to our content warning. While we're focusing our discussion on chapters 13 through 18 and book 1, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing, lore, and other insights across the ACOTAR series. So yes, these episodes are spoiler central for the whole ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, have spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of some episodes, like this one, where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big old spoiler warning beforehand, so if you haven't read the other two series, you can leave the episode right there, no worries at all, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and/or Crescent City crossover callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why the Pool of Starlight has about 45,000 different theories around it, so much that I'm pretty sure it took 5 years off of Lexi and my life this week, please finish the book series and then come back when you are done.
Next, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, folks, this podcast is rated R.
Feyre might have a blood kink when it comes to Timmy Tam's body, and yes, I will be calling it out. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
Oh my gosh, it's like all vampire-y here. My goodness. Last thing before we jump into our ACOTAR episode 3. If you love Fantasy Fangirls, if you are already loving this ACOTAR journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, discounted merch, early access to ad-free episodes, copies of our gigantic outlines, and so much more, please check out our Patreon.
We have 2 membership tiers that you can join. Number 1, the Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, access to our book club, and 20% off merch, all for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, special voting privileges on things like Suriel topics, merch designs, bonus episode content, and more. And that is $10 a month. Basically, our Patreon is the best people in the entire world, and we love you all so much. Thank you for being here.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in the show notes or YouTube caption, depending how you're tuning in right now. And really and truly, thank you so much for helping us bring these episodes to you. We love you.
And now it is time to capture a Suriel.
So excited! Nicole's going to open this discussion with a summary of what happens in chapters 13 through 18. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 13. Entering the study, Tamlin said, "Let there be light!" Feyre is overwhelmed by the sheer amount of books, and she dives into her reading practice, silently telling Tamlin to get the fuck out. The next day, Feyre continues to write a list of words that she doesn't know so that she can practice them. This is much better than my strategy of, if it's important later, I'll figure out the meaning. Frustrated by her human ignorance, she throws her list in the trash and gets up to look around the study, more specifically at a giant mural which tells the story of Prythian and a map of the 7 courts. And yes, we will be going beat by beat through this info dump. Tamlin sneaks in to check on his human and offers to help Feyre write to her family, but Feyre again epically shoots him down. Instead, she goes to Lucian's room. Maybe Tamlin's jealousy isn't in his head after all. She asks Lucian how to trap this all-knowing creature, the Suriel, or as I will be referring to it, Google. And he tells her, get a dead chicken, get in a glen with running water, and hope that someone is hunting nearby should you scream. Damn, I just have to open up a web browser. Chapter 14. In the woods, Feyre finds her perching spot and begins to wait for the all-mysterious walking Google. Hours later, with a snap, she has caught the search engine. Putting on a brave face, because this thing is horrifying, she faces off with this creature and it starts spilling the tea. Tamlin is the High Lord. Who saw that coming? She's not allowed to leave the Spring Court. Also, stay with the High Lord. There are 7 High Lords. Google, you forgot to mention which one. The Suriel also begins revealing the story of a king across the sea and his many followers. One in particular who disobeyed him, who is stirring up some troublesome tea of her own. But just as the tea is starting to get spicy, something evil enters the clearing. Chapter 15. It's MicrosoftBing.com! Oh, no, it's an even more horrifying creature. Feyre screams loudly for Lucian and shoots an arrow to free the Suriel Google. She immediately then kills one of these terrifying Naga, killing him on sight. Feyre 1, Naga 0. Running through the forest, she tries to free herself from these serpentine creatures, but before she knows it, she is surrounded. Pinned to the ground by one, Feyre won't go down without a fight. So taking Lucian's hunting knife, she shoves it into one of the Naga's neck. Feyre 2, Naga 0. Come on, y'all, give her a challenge. But then who enters the clearing but Timmy Tam? Tam, who kills the remaining 2 Naga. Timmy Tam gives Fae-vorite his shirt, and despite having come close to death, Fae-vorite checks out his blood-soaked body. Tamlin and Fae-vorite head back to the manor with the Suriel's "stay with the High Lord, human" advice ringing through her head. I can almost hear the Suriel go, "Not that one!"
I can't wait for us to talk about this because I have a different opinion about the Suriel's meaning.
It's about to get spicy. Chapter 16. Later, cleaned up and sipping some hot chocolate, Fae-vorite asks Alice questions about this potential war she learned from the Suriel. Alice won't reveal anything about the war, but she does start to open up to Fae-vorite about her family. Alice ends the conversation, though, with giving Fae-vorite probably the most important advice she's ever received. If you need to ensnare a Suriel again, don't get him chicken. Instead, give him fashion in the form of a new robe. This will be the most helpful advice ever. Thank you, Alice. Fae-vorite goes down to the dining room. Yep, we're back, baby. And it turns out the tea is not done getting spilled. The trio begins to talk about the different mortal beliefs around fairies. Turns out fairies can lie. Iron doesn't do shit, but Ashwood, that does seem to do the trick. Lucian excuses himself, and Tam puts on his flirtin' hat, bringing out her thrown-away list of words that she was so ashamed of and begins to read them off. Tamlin, stick to your blood-soaked shirts, my guy. Fae-vorite, pissed, is about to leave, but Tamlin extends a hand paw, telling her about his stance on slavery and tyranny. He's against them, by the way, and also reveals that he has her family under a glamour, believing that Fae-vorite is away with a sick aunt and to run away at any signs of trouble from north of the wall. Seeing this as a peace offering, Fae-vorite offers up her own piece of info to Tamlin. She likes to paint, and Tam and Fae-vorite set their first date in the gallery in a few days. Chapter 17. Fae-vorite wakes up from another nightmare, this one full of Google Suriel, the Bing.com Naga, and a faceless woman who's shredding her throat. Is that you, ChatGPT? Fae-vorite, hearing a bunch of hoopla downstairs, sees Tamlin carrying in a blue fairy who is profusely bleeding from his back. This poor blue fairy keeps repeating the same words over and over again. I'm blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-die. Oh, wait, no, he says, she took my wings. Lucian, sick to his stomach, runs from the room and leaves Fae-vorite and Tamlin to tend to the dying fairy. Tamlin saying, hold still, you'll die faster, is shockingly not calming the fairy down. But Fae-vorite grabs the hand of the fairy and soothes him into stillness. Tamlin, taking a hint, holds the fairy's other hand and says the Prythian death prayer to the fairy as he slowly crosses into the land of milk and honey. Staying with him as his blood runs cold, Tamlin finally escorts Fae-vorite back to her room. But curious, he has to know why she would help a fairy after what happened with Andrus, and Fae-vorite admits that she wouldn't want to die alone and she is sorry for killing Andrus. Tamlin, leaving without a word, off to bury the lost member of the Blue Man group. But don't worry, Fae-vorite checks out his blood-soaked body yet again. Chapter 18. The next day, it's time to shake off the gloom from the prior night. Tamlin and Fae-vorite and the third wheel Lucian ride off to a breathtaking glen, which Fae-vorite begins to show that she's softening up to these fairies by cracking jokes. The males are shocked. Tamlin wants to show her more, though. His dick. Wait, no, not yet. He takes her to a pool of starlight that I have devoted more internet search time to than I'd like to admit. Fae-vorite starts to ask about Lucian's past. Again, Tamlin making moves, and she brings up Lucian. That's rough, buddy. We learn about Lucian's horrible family. After they killed the woman he loved, he ran away and became Tamlin's emissary. Fae-vorite, desperate to change the subject from sad boy Lucian, challenges Timmy Tam to an almost skinny dip. Stripping down to her modest underwear, Tamlin's eyes grow hungry looking at her body, and he strips down as well. Nicole's pulse skyrockets. The two enjoy a swim and a vulnerable chat. On the ride back, the heart-to-hearts aren't done. Lucian privately admits to Fae-vorite that he hesitated to help her with the Google Suriel, and Fae-vorite acknowledges that she understands his dislike for her. But Lucian hands over his hunting knife with a truce and a please don't bury it in my back.
Yay! Thank you so much, Nicole, for that fantastic Inner Circle debrief.
Our girl is very active in this episode, from hunting the Suriel and the Naga to swimming in the pools of starlight. And I know when I'm active, or when I'm even just sitting in a desk all day, I am smelly. I tried every freaking female deodorant under the sun, but none have kept me smelling like spring court flowers. That is, until I tried Lumi. Unlike certain other deodorants, Lumi whole body deodorant is powered by mandelic acid to deliver outrageous 72-hour odor control everywhere from your pits to your feet. And yes, that even includes your privates. We gotta get them smelling fresh for calamine next episode.
In fact, it was patients' concerns about private part odor that originally inspired the OBGYN who invented Lumi. Fast forward 6 years and her game-changing whole body deodorant has now earned over 300,000 5-star reviews from people like us who love smelling great and feeling confident from head to toe. And we're so excited to give all of our Fantasy Fangirls a special offer. New customers get $5 off Lumi's starter pack with code FFG at lumideodorant.com. And that is spelled Lume. LumiDeodorant.com.
Lumi Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi Starter Pack with code FFG at LumiDeodorant.com. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit LumiDeodorant.com and use code FFG.
It is time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, foreshadowing theories, so many theories today, and so much more. So we left off last episode with Feyre and Tamlin entering the study. It's so sweet how she just wants to let her family know she's safe. She previously grappled with the realization that she's no longer needed, that they truly are taken care of and, quite frankly, better off without her. But she has that innate need to reach out and connect with the only people she's ever truly known. She still wants to protect them from afar by warning them about the Blythe, but this is where she falls short in her abilities.
This is where we learn a lot more about Feyre's education, specifically her lack of education and her illiteracy. Her mother sorely ignored her education, not even wanting to hire a governess. Why? I'm like so mad at this. Why, Mama Archeron? We also know later that Nesta, and we assume Elaine too, didn't realize that Feyre couldn't read. So I'll give them a small break for not, helping their sister and like educating her and stuff like that, especially when they went into poverty.
I don't know, like the sisters, especially Nesta, I'll say especially Nesta, they deemed the village school beneath them, right? Again, while they were still in poverty, they still thought that they were better than everyone else. If Nesta hadn't been so judgy, Feyre could have had an opportunity to learn more. So yes, originally Mama Archeron, which again, like she was wanting to marry her daughters off, and it's like, okay, that's great, but don't you want them to be educated? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't think so.
I think it was more of just like her lack of care for her children, and that is why it was reflected in that way, of really just driving it home. I feel for Feyre so much. She's humiliated Tamlin even knows about her illiteracy, and she's definitely not going to ask for help and put herself in an even more vulnerable position. But at the same time, she's desperate to contact her family. I love being in Feyre's head and getting her POV narration. Her inner dialogue really puts you in her shoes, feeling her emotions and understanding all of her complex struggles, from everything with her family dynamic, to being stuck in Prythian, to her loneliness, to her inability to read and write. This is the book where we really get to know Feyre, trust her, and connect with her before we embark on an even greater epic journey together with her. Even in these earlier books, I really admire SJM's writing style and her ability to make us emotionally connect with these characters. It feels like we're seeing and experiencing from their eyes. I mean, Feyre's eyes in this instance here.
But then Feyre, frustrated, stands up, needs a little breakity break. I never took breaks when I was studying. I'm like kind of a lizard with that, but it's supposed to be really good for you. So she's doing some really good productivity here. And she comes across this epic mural.
I'm so excited to talk about this. It's tucked away, like this masterpiece is no big deal whatsoever. I just love those little details like that. And we get a really great info dump about Prythian, especially the geography, especially if you haven't already checked out the map in the physical book. I'm not going to get too much into the map right now because I'll be diving deep into the Prythian geography and the courts in today's Suriel tea time. But let's focus on what is illustrated here with the story of Prythian and walk through it. Panel 1, it shows how the world began when female hands, who we later learn is considered the mother, tips over a mighty black cauldron and its gold and sparkling contents spill out. Hold up. Feyre realizes the liquid isn't actually sparkling, but rather small symbols, possibly in an ancient Fae language. Yep, stay tuned for today's Maasverse Madness on that. And these contents of the cauldron are what form the world. Prythian is part of this world, yes, but it is much bigger than this large island. It says larger continents beyond, plural continents. We only know about one continent to the east, and then Hybern is to the west, so I'm curious about that. But anyway, panel 2 is a battlefield showing thousands of human soldiers lined up facing the charging fairy hordes, and it's the moment before the slaughter. This is the representation of the war 500 years ago. Panel 3, it's another map with far less fairy territory. In fact, south of the wall, it's a blur of nothing, reflecting that the mortal realm is of no concern here. Not important detail of this story the mural is telling. This new map of panel 3 represents the result of the war that was panel 2 and what the treaty ensured. Fae and humans separate, dividing their lands so that the Fae are north and the humans are south. You will remember that from episode 1's Suriel section. On the continent, the Fae were forced to give up a sizable portion to the mortals. I measured it on the map. It's about like a quarter of the continent for the humans, and then the rest is for the Fae. I have so many questions about that continent, and especially the Fae there, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. In Prythian, where our story takes place, the Fae kept most of the island. It's more like the mortals have less than like an eighth or even a 1/9 of the territory, to give you a comparison. The Spring Court was the territory that had to give up the most of its land to the mortals because it borders the wall and the mortal lands. I really love how this map represents the courts and brings the geography to life with their unique representations. I also just gotta love how daunting the Night Court feels. Feyre describes it as a land of lethal beauty, causing the hair on her arms to rise. Whew, mine did just right now too. This is just, again, one more mention of how much she's drawn to the night. Yes, it's dangerous, but she also sees the beauty of the night here. Although she also says, never go north, I'm never going north, which, that's all I have to say to that. Last thing to note here for the mural is how the middle is represented with the mountain range. Feyre thinks that the viewer of this mural is already supposed to know what this indicates, because yes, all Fae do know the symbolism and sacredness of the middle, and the humans obviously don't.
Now, Tamlin sneaks in as she's lost in these murals, and I gotta give it to him. He's trying, which is better than last episode. After watching Feyre struggle with one of the children's books in his study, he offers to help her out by writing to her family for her. And when Feyre, who, let's be real, she's in a bit of a spiral right now, she's really down on herself, Tamlin is an easy person for her to take her anger out on, she throws back at him, quote, "Help? You mean a fairy is passing up the opportunity to mock an ignorant mortal?" But Timmy Tam does not back down, saying that he's happy to help her, especially since he owes her for patching up his hand. Looks like Lucian's words from last chapter actually had an effect on him.
His grade is going up. It went from a B- to attempt to, I'll give it an A- now. Are we at an A yet, or are we at B+?
I'd say B+. But
okay, we're at B+ territory.
Attempt. It's attempt. It's not.
Oh yes, attempt.
It's definitely attempt. But Feyre keeps prodding him, and we start to see some more of that Tamlin jealousy come out, mentioning how she won't let him help her, but she'll let Lucian take her on hunts. But Feyre cuts him off with a quote, "Lucian doesn't pretend to be anything but what he is." Here's my question for you, Lex. Do you think that Tamlin is pretending to be something else, or is he being true to his nature? Just Lucian is a lot louder, more extroverted than Tamlin, who is a lot softer and more reserved.
That's a good question. I don't think that he's pretending to be something else. He just doesn't confidently know what he wants, which leads to this like wishy-washy behavior he's exhibited so far with her. So it comes off as being insincere because, well, it kind of has been, but it's for different reasons than Feyre thinks. Tamlin's going through the motions, but not being very genuine about it. So Feyre is a little confused about her captor, who's trying to be a savior, but isn't coming off as genuine. She clarifies herself by going on to say she doesn't know him, who he is, or what he wants. Because, yeah, girl's got a point here. He isn't telling her any of that. He's been super reserved with half-hearted attempts to be nice, which leaves her wondering what he wants from her. This is one of those situations where both parties are correct, but they are definitely not on the same page. And I understand why, especially for Feyre's reasoning.
Well, Timmy Tam's B+ is about to go down to a B-, if not lower, because he really drives it home with a quote, "You aren't what I had in mind for a human, believe me." Tamlin,
oh yeah, that's C territory. That's D territory. That's not even attempt territory. That's just one big F failure.
He knew that this human was going to be someone who killed a fairy with, quote, "hate in her heart." That is part of the curse. Did you think it would be easy to woo her, Tamlin? I think that Tamlin, who's had people serve him his entire life, who's had people not push back on him, at least really aggressively his entire life, he has forgotten what hard work is outside of his warrior beast form. Yes, he fights hard for his lands when creatures come a knockin', but those are more reactive moments. It's more dealing with the surface level problem, like a naga comes into his territory, so he kills it, rather than the root of the problem, which takes a lot of hard work.
Well, and Feyre told him what he did not want to hear, that she doesn't know him or who he is or what he wants, and she's understandably jumping to conclusions about how she can't trust fairies because they're supposed to want to kill and torture humans. Again, this is all she's ever known, and his intentions haven't been clear, so she's understandably wary of him. So what does Tamlin do? He fires back with the intention to harm her and go toe-to-toe with the judgment and prejudice, literally proving her point of his wishy-washy, conflicting, and confusing attitude toward her.
I have a quick question, though. He has seen Lucien get sassy, get a little bit more confrontational with her, and her maybe not dish it back quite yet, but her handle it a lot better than whatever Tamlin's doing right now. Do you think he's trying to almost emulate Lucian's behavior?
That's a good question. No, because I don't think that he's that good at strategy.
I don't think he's doing it consciously. He's not.
Yes.
Like you said, he's not a strategy master.
Okay, and then when Tamlin leaves, Feyre's negative self-talk just keeps going. And what a knife twist it is that it's in Nesta's voice, further demonstrating the trauma that Nesta has inflicted on her sister, using her words and sneering voice as weapons.
It's a bad look for our girl Nesta right now.
Oh, it's
really
such a bad look. There's no excuse for Nesta's behavior in these early books. It's just going to be an evolution of her character, which is very different. Anyway, that's getting way ahead of the horse here.
So Feyre goes off to Lucian's room after epically turning down Tamlin. And I do find it interesting that Lucian's room is decorated in the colors of autumn, especially given how much, and we learn this in chapter 18, but given how much he detests his family. He even refuses to use his family name when Feyre introduces him as Lucien Van Serra. He's like, I don't use my family name. Why does he represent his room in the Autumn Court then?
My goodness, you're full of good questions today.
Does he
detest? It's because you're wearing your Suriel shirt here.
I'm wearing my Google shirt right now.
Does Lucien detest his family or the Autumn Court? I see it as a way for him to pay homage to his roots, especially because it seems rather uncommon for Fae to leave a court for another. Could there be some level of guilt? And there is always that feeling that he never really fits in the Spring Court. Lucien is ultimately a guy without a home. Now, obviously, the Spring Court is his home right now, but that might be reflective of he needs to hold on to his roots, because without his roots, without somewhere to call really and truly his homeland, what does Lucien have? And that's a real struggle that he's going to have to come to terms with.
I didn't think about it as him almost separating the family from the court, because it does seem like the High Lords and the families around the High Lords and the court itself are so intertwined in our story, especially as we get into ACOTAR. I also find it funny that with all of Lucian's wiseness, his emissariness, he only knew the difficult way to ensnare a Suriel. Like Lexi said, I'm wearing my Suriel shirt today, and at the very bottom it says, now accepting payments in chicken. And to be honest, I just need a shirt that just says that, because that's my MO. But Lucien tells Feyre to go to a grove with a freshly slaughtered chicken, now accepting payments in chicken, and pin its legs with a double loop snare. Then later, Alice is going to practically huff at Feyre that all you need to do is give him a cloak and they will run right towards you. Why does Lucien know the hard way? What is with these boys and doing things the hard way?
Girls rule and boys drool. But really, I love how Alice knows the better way and he knows like the brute way. Like it's very fitting. I'll just leave it at that.
Like these warriors who are like,
we love you guy listeners who are tuning in. We promise.
Fantasy fanboys, we love you.
This whole exchange though just like really cracked me up because it's just not subtle whatsoever. But that's obviously the point of this conversation. I think Lucien also realizes that Feyre, she won't give up on seeking answers and going after the Suriel. So he's like, okay, fine, I'll help you. Maybe he even hopes the Suriel can give her information they can't, where it's kind of like, okay, like we can't give you the right information, but maybe somebody else can. I don't think he actually hopes that the Suriel kills her. He does later confirm that he didn't want that to happen, but this might be a test, definitely, to see just how capable she is. And like he says, he's starting to like her for a murdering human.
He's at least doing like I'd say he's doing a B++, whereas Tamlin went straight down to an F. So
Tamlin is trying to be helpful. I will give him that. And Lucien is actually able to be helpful because Feyre accepts his help.
That's true. That's true. Now we move off to the Suriel, a highly anticipated part for this podcast. I love seeing Feyre's hunter mind at work here. She's searching for a place to wait for the Suriel that has to be near running water. She finds the stream, and then right where she lays a snare, she then traces multiple different paths from the snare to the stream should her route get blocked. And she like memorizes all of these paths. She is so incredibly intelligent, and I love seeing that. It's such a small touch, but it's so important to build up that Feyre is calculating. She is smart. She is equivalent to someone who might be the most cunning High Lord even. I love seeing that at work here. While Feyre is sitting up in a tree, she wonders if Tamlin and Lucien ever get tired of eternal spring, even wondering if they venture into other territories to experience another season. Lexi, I just only thought of you here. I truly only thought of you during this. I love this because it's priming us readers to know that Feyre isn't supposed to be here. She is a seasons girly. I also love this part because, quote, I wouldn't have minded endless mild spring while looking after my family. Winter brought us dangerously close to death every year. But if I were immortal, I might want a little variation to pass the time. This is perfect foreshadowing for, yes, the spring court is what she needed as a human who was starving and didn't know how to laugh or live. As a high fae, when she becomes immortal in later this book, but specifically next book, this eternal spring just does not fit her anymore.
I love it. Yes. Oh, all the seeds are being planted here. Last note here. And she says, quote, I'd probably want to do more than lurk around a manor house too. If she did stay in the spring court as Tamlin's wife, this is exactly what would have been expected and, yes, forced upon her. Feyre isn't meant to stay caged up with the same day in and day out, even if it's going to be healing for her now as a human.
She's destined for so much more, like opening up an art studio in the Rainbow Quarter and teaching children how to express themselves through painting. I love our entrepreneurial high lady. But then our girl Feyre catches the Suriel, and this motherfucker is terrifying to the point that Feyre is like, yeah, Lucien overestimated me and he wants me dead. I'm going to pull the descriptions for the Suriel because it's so intricate, this description. It has a hunched back, scabby gray arms, yellow cracked fingernails, no skin, only dry bone that makes up its body. It has slitted holes for nostrils, moldy Voldemort style, and white milky eyes. Yummy. I love that here Feyre says that the Suriel's eyes are, quote, white of death. In ACOTAR, Feyre says, quote, I realized that the color of death of sorrow was white. I love that connection there. But after the Suriel says human, we get our first my bowels turned watery mention.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
But this is not the only my bowels turned watery mention in the book. You know that viral sound right now that's like, if I had like a nickel for every time X, Y, or Z happened, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? This is what I think about when I hear that sound, because this is the first of several mentions we get of my bowels turned watery. Thank you, Sarah J. Maas, for your gift to this world.
And yes, we will absolutely be counting them.
Yes, this is one, which is one too many in my mind.
I want to back up for a moment and speculate why it's so easy for Feyre to catch the Suriel. This is supposed to be extremely hard. Even Rhys has tried and failed to catch a Suriel. While, yes, I do think that this is ultimately a very convenient plot device, and we just have to look past it like we sometimes have to for our favorite stories, we do have to remember how skilled of a huntress Feyre is. We were just talking about how SJM describes her skill and know-how when she's setting the trap. She may be a fragile human girl, but she cannot be underestimated. And she is underestimated time and time again in this book, only for her to rise up and prove her capability. And hey, this is just one of those instances. The Suriel also ends up being curious about her, and I'll go so far to say likes Feyre. I'm not sure I believe the Suriel let itself be caught to hang out with a human, since it didn't seem to expect the snare, but ultimately these two form something of a friendship, and Feyre speculates that the second time it let itself be caught. They're both dreamers after all. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry so much when we get to that part, but we're not there yet. So I'm going to guess that this first time the Suriel warms up to Feyre and answers her questions out of sheer curiosity of coming across a human after it's caught in the snare. Or maybe it can even like sense that there's a human nearby, and maybe, no, this time it did not let itself get caught because it was very startled when the snare came through. So yes, the Suriel absolutely does not forget in later books how Feyre saved its life from the Naga, and therefore that's why they end up forming this friendship. So I just wanted to point that out there.
Love the Suriel. Feyre might need to change her underwear after going face to face with the Suriel, and I hope she changes it into something incredibly comfy with lots of different design options, like a night-themed moonrise pair, for instance. And I hope she changes it into one that she can even match with her High Lord. Which High Lord? We'll talk about that soon. Basically, I hope that Feyre chooses a pair of me undies. Personally, I got 2 pairs. One is my narwhal pair that I love. My second is my fantasy heart just in underwear, and it is called 4 Houses. It's a deer, lion, dragon, and wolf on it. If you know, you know. Dun, 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 dun. My favorite part, though, is that these are easily the softest pair of underwear that I and Feyre own. Plus, they make me just so happy to wear.
From all black classics to fun, expressive prints, MeUndies has a look for everyone. Plus, they come in sizes extra small to 4XL, guaranteeing a flattering cut for every body. And something that I particularly love is that MeUndies is not just about underwear. I basically live in loungewear, shock of shocks, and I've had so much fun exploring the lounge collection featuring comfy joggers, hoodies, onesies for the kids, and more. And their Me Move activewear collection, oh my gosh, it feels like the softest activewear on the market.
And the best of all, they use sustainably sourced materials and work with partners that care for their workers. And guess what? If you're not happy with your first pair of MeUndies, it's on MeUndies.
All Fantasy Fangirls listeners can get 20% off on your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/FFG. That's MeUndies.com/FFG for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in.
Now, Feyre starts to play a game of 20 questions. It's really actually just 5 questions, but they're 5 loaded questions. So we're going to go beat by beat through each of these questions and the Suriel's cryptic and sometimes not so cryptic answers. Question number 1, Feyre asks, is there truly no way for me to go home? Suriel says, quote, not unless you want to be killed and your family with you. On the surface, this looks like just because of the treaty and according to her knowledge of it right now, she would be going against it. But I also want to think about Claire better. Amarantha thought that Claire was the one who Tamlin was falling in love with, and as a result, epically killed her family and more epically killed Claire under the mountain. So actually, is the Suriel talking about Amarantha being the supposed killer here?
Maybe, although Amarantha doesn't know about her yet. She only takes Claire because she finds out that there is indeed a human, and at this time she does not know that. It could also be referring to Feyre and her family's eventual deaths with the invasion of the mortal realm. If Feyre returns to her family, the curse cannot be broken, and Amarantha and the King of Hybern are unstoppable with their plans, resulting in her family, and all the rest of the humans dying.
That's it right there. I think you just nailed it. We've got question number 2. What do you know about Tamlin? The Suriel responds with, be more specific, human, be more specific, for I know a great many things about the High Lord of the Spring Court. Oh, hello, High Lord. How was my Suriel voice, by the way?
It was really, really great. I loved it. I was going to say, wow, you've been listening to the audiobook, I can tell.
Jennifer Ikeda, I want to praise Jennifer Ikeda for a second because she did such a freaking good job with the Suriel. She's so good with these creatures. But hello, High Lord mention. Finally, leave it to the Suriel to finally share the tea. Prior to this, Feyre did not know that Tamlin was the High Lord, which I want to just pause for a second. I don't know why, but from the moment she was in Prythian on my first read, I just assumed that Tamlin was the High Lord. So when the Suriel says this and Feyre starts freaking out, I was like, why are you losing it, girl? You knew this. Like, you're fine. Only to realize that she didn't, and I was dissing her for no reason like a bitch.
Well, like we were saying in the last episode, the idea that Tamlin is one of the High Lords is just so insane that it doesn't even cross her mind. Like, again, it's like a High Lord coming to literally pick her up from her house in the mortal realms. Like, what? And she thinks that the High Lords, they are bad, even wondering if it was the High Lord who took Lucian's eye. Remember all of the stories that she's been hearing, and yes, while these High Fae turn out to be more like what the Children of the Blessed thought, she still has no idea about the High Lord. Tamlin doesn't meet her expectations of a High Lord, despite all the signs pointing to him indeed being the High Lord.
Question number 3. Because the Suriel is not wearing a mask, Feyre asks if the Suriel is not a member of the Spring Court. The Suriel answers with, I am a member of no court. I am older than the High Lords, older than Prythian, older than the bones of this world. Reading this is so sad, knowing that, God fucking damn it, Ianthe is the one who will bring it down in ACOTAR, which is just one of the saddest scenes. I think I cried when that Suriel died, and I don't think I cried when Rhysand died. get to that later.
Oh, man. Yeah. So I also want to start talking about some theories here because there are plenty of theories floating out there on the interwebs about who the Suriel really is. There's one theory that's actually really interesting is that it's a time traveler and that this is the reason it knows everything because it's already lived out the future. Or there's another one that the Suriel is something like a Fae and is just really, really old, like 15,000 years old, and is basically just not aged very well. There are even some Maasverse crossover theories, though we're not going to explore that today because we got plenty else to explore. I personally believe that the Suriel is exactly what it's made out to be. The name Suriel means God's prince or God's commander in Hebrew. If I had to guess, the Suriels were created by the mother. Remember that mural and how the Cauldron's contents created the world. So yes, I think that the Suriel was part of that. And they are something like a seer, like that's the best way I can describe it, where they vaguely know what's to come in the future, like how everything will be righted by staying with the High Lord, but there's still not that same clarity as the past or present because the future, it's always fluid. So it still is very vague, but it still kind of knows. So yeah, so I think that the Suriel is something like a seer in that sense.
Question number 4. What can be done about the blight and where did it come from? The Suriel answers with, stay with the High Lord, human. That's all you can do. You will be safe. Do not interfere. Do not go looking for answers after today, or you will be devoured by the shadow over Prythian. He will shield you from it, so stay close to him and all will be righted. We need to talk about this.
Everybody hold up.
So let's start with the obvious part, which is stay with the High Lord. On the surface, this looks like, oh, stay with Timitam because he's super powerful and he will protect you. I mean, he literally protects her right after this scene. But then after this book, you're like, oh my God, it's stay with the High Lord, stay with Tamlin because you need to break the curse. And that's the only way to do it is by following him under the mountain and so on and so forth. But then Rhysand enters the chat. Stay with Rhysand, the High Lord, for the shadow over Prythian, aka Hybern, not Amarantha, will be righted by his side. Suriel's out here playing the long game.
I actually have a slightly different take on this because I have read this scene so many times trying to see every which way that the Suriel was actually referring to Rhys. And I'm sure a lot of other readers have been looking at the scene being like, how? And I'm ultimately going with the statement of stay with the High Lord is definitely a double meaning. I know you were kind of saying that there too, but everything on the page reads that she should stay with Tamlin. The Suriel literally says to run for the High Lord's manor and to stay with the High Lord in back-to-back sentences. Then it immediately follows up with return to the High Lord's side. I'm going to argue that it is definitely talking about staying with Tamlin in this instance, with a big and attached to that advice to make it a double meaning. Sneaky, sneaky, Suriel. Stay with the High Lord and then find and stay with Rhys for all to be righted. Stay with Tamlin to kick off the series of events. And when Feyre dies, she has to hold on to a tether of life, and that is when there's that shift, and that is when she has to stay with Rhys. Remember, she's holding on to life by holding on to Rhys. She's staying with him to come back. It's like through their bond, her soul is holding on to him, and it's considered home, and that is where that transfer of meaning is. The Suriel may later on in ACOTAR be like, oh yes, I was talking about Rhys, but I really do think that in this moment he is talking about Tamlin, but there is that double meaning and a transfer of the staying with the High Lord, because Feyre then has to stay with Rhys, obviously, eventually leading to everything being righted with the two of them fixing the cauldron to save the world. Long story short, our dear Suriel loves drama and making a fandom go, what?
Well, I also love that this is one of the answers that Feyre thinks, well, that wasn't exactly an answer. Yes, it was not an answer, but it is an answer if you have the whole series under your belt.
In regard to the Blythe, I've been assuming that the Suriel is also affected by Amarantha's curse and can't give a blatant answer, so it's giving other workaround information to benefit Feyre, or because the Blythe is made up by Tamlin, it's like, I actually don't know that answer, but here's a bunch of other answers for you. You know, that would actually be inconsistent with the Suriel supposed to be Prythian's like Google search though.
But I also don't know if the Suriel ever gives like just a straightforward answer. But I think that's kind of like one of the parts of catching a Suriel is, and like also keep in mind, like High Fae are supposed to be these like super clever creatures. I mean, look at Amarantha's riddle. Question number 5, last but not least. Feyre repeats, where did the blight come from? Once again, it responds with a kind of non-answer. It says, quote, "The High Lord does not know that you came here today, does he? He does not know that his human woman came to trap a Suriel because he cannot give her the answers she seeks." So this does check out. He cannot give her the answers she seeks because of the curse from Amarantha, which forbade anyone in the Spring Court from telling the human girl about the curse. I love that the Suriel uses the High Lord as kind of a blanket statement for whoever it could be, any of the 7. And the Suriel right now is jumping back and forth between 2 different High Lords, which is infuriating.
And then, of course, Feyre focuses on the fact that the Suriel said his human woman. She's mad about it. Tamlin is already taking ownership of her, and others perceive it as such, especially this all-knowing Google creature, and it makes her clench her teeth.
That's so funny because I took it as like, you think he likes me, Suriel?
But she's mad about it.
My romantic ass was like, oh, it means he likes me. Like,
meanwhile, I'm like, she's clenching her teeth.
It's sexual frustration, Lexi. That's what's clench her teeth. But then the Suriel actually starts answering some of her questions, even though because it's so coded and because she doesn't know who any of these people are, it doesn't really seem like it from her perspective at this moment.
I mean, she did ask where the Blythe comes from. The Blythe is Amarantha. Amarantha came from Hybern. Boom.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Suriel is just getting to the good stuff when they were stopped. We have to wonder how much more it was going to tell Feyre, how much more it could tell Feyre. I'm really starting to think that the Suriel isn't restricted by the curse in the same way that the Spring Court is, and it is answering Feyre in its characteristic way. In Mist and Fury, remember, it tries these indirect answers then too, and Feyre begs it not to be cryptic. So yes, it is just a cryptic creature with its answers, and I don't think that it is restricted in the same way. And I bet that's partly why Lucian let her kind of go out to see if she could catch it, and yeah.
We learned that across the Western Sea, there is a fairy kingdom called Hybern, ruled by a king. Skirt! A king, yes, not a High Lord. A High King, if you will. Oop, got about 4 books ahead. I cannot wait to talk about that. This king of Hybern hates humans and makes sure that they do not exist on his lands. But don't worry, he made a throne of their bones just for the hell of it. But this king's creepy chair was not enough. He is still unhappy about being forced to sign the treaty and let go of all of his mortal slaves 500 years ago. So 100 years ago, he dispatched his most trusted commanders, warriors, and remnants of his armies, spies, and courtiers, all just as pissy as Hybern. He sent them to live amongst the 7 courts and other various kingdoms around the world. And for the first 50 years, they fed him info. But then one of the commanders disobeyed him. We learn that this commander is called the Deceiver. Oh, darn! It looks like tea time is over, though, because suddenly they are not alone. The Suriel begs Feyre to free it and run. Oh, but just in case you forgot, quote, "Don't forget what I told you. Stay with the High Lord and live to see everything righted. Wink, wink, hint, hint, Feyre." But then the fairies made of shadow, hate, and rot, the Naga, are approaching.
Feyre describes their shadowy figures as so dark that they seemed made from a starless night. It's interesting how starry nights are safe and comforting for Feyre. Remember back with the bogey, how that's what she thought of, and of course then her dresser too. But the starless night description reveals the dark and dangerous side of the night. Rhys is often painted as the shadowy dark night, while Feyre, his equal, is his counterpart of starlight.
The Naga, as a friendly reminder, look like a horrendous combination of serpentine features and male bodies. Honestly, it's worth a quick Google search, not the Suriel Google, like the actual Google, because there are some really good fan art of the Naga. And I gotta give Feyre some massive credit here. Not only does she shoot the Suriel free first, giving us a glimpse at who she is at her true core, but she also immediately knocks another arrow and it hits home with the Naga. Our girl is a good shot. She even manages to swing her bow and basically bitch slap one of the Naga before she gets caught by them. I think we can agree, Lexi, that she is a Gryffindor. Yes?
Yes, she is a Gryffindor, but I'm still going with like 75% Gryffindor. So she is sorted into it, but there is 25% Slytherin in her.
I do see some Slytherin, but yes, I do agree. 75% Gryffindor, 25% Slytherin. I will agree with you on that one.
Okay, we can at least agree on one character.
That's about it, though. That's about it.
I also love that Feyre notes that these are the kind of fairies, the Naga, that she would have happily killed that day in the woods. She's recognizing how different the fairies can be, and she's distinguishing the good from the bad. These are obviously bad fairies, bad fairies, that she would not feel bad whatsoever about killing. She even thinks how they still wanted to kill her, so she let her arrow fly. Like there was that same sequence right there, emphasizing that she is actively choosing to kill in self-defense, and she feels confident shooting her arrow in this instance versus shooting the deer while hunting with Lucian a few days ago, where she drew the bow, but she did not shoot it because it was an innocent poor little deer, Bambi. And in this case, it's like, no, I gotta kill this motherfucker. So that, again, just seeing the contrast there and really showing her true character.
As she's surrounded and one of the Naga has her pinned, we get a quote, reek of carrion. If you're like me, that word might have sounded a little familiar. Allow me to enlighten you. First and foremost, carrion means the decaying flesh of dead animals. Delicious. But this is not the only time we will hear this word in this series. The Book of Breathings in ACOMAF will call Feyre the Princess of Carrion, and the first part of ACOWAR is called Princess of Carrion. Many people think that this refers to her huntress role. There's a few more options that people think it might mean, but we'll get into that when we cover ACOMAF. But I love that right now this word is being used while she is being hunted. However, right after this exchange, she takes her knife and slams it up into the Naga's leathery neck, thus becoming the hunter again.
That is so cool. I did not put two and two together there.
I really went into detective work for this episode, apparently. No wonder it took me forever.
We are seeing on full display here how much of a fighter, how much of a survivor Feyre is. She refuses to die at the hands or claws of these Naga, alone in the woods. Her sheer will and her skill and her desperation are what help her last as long as she does. But with a bellowing roar, who's that to the rescue? Mufasa!
We're just going to have 1,000 different names for Tamlin and his beast form at this point.
Well, you know, like in The Lion King, and how when they're in the elephant graveyard, and then they're about to get eaten by the hyenas, and then you hear Mufasa's roar, and he comes to save the day.
It has been forever since I've seen that movie. So no, I don't remember this scene.
I haven't seen it recently either, but it's such a... Anyway.
I thought this was one of your son's new obsession movies.
No, I'm not even going to go into it right now.
Don't worry, the Formula One season's starting again. He'll have much to watch.
Oh my God, my son loves Formula One, my 2-year-old. Yeah!
I'm so proud of my godson. Oh my God. Now, Tamlin is in his high fae form, but his claws are out. Our claw watch has come back, but for once it's at an appropriate time. He tears the throat out of one of the remaining Naga, but then when they all lay dead, he goes to help Feyre. Now remember, Feyre just learned that he is the High Lord, so she is terrified of him in this moment. But then she realizes that he, when hearing her scream, came to save her, and she softens up a little bit, even taking his hand when he when he stretches one out to help her up.
I've been talking about how Tamlin has half-heartedly tried to extend a metaphorical hand to Feyre, and she keeps slapping it away. Well, finally, she doesn't, literally. He literally holds out a hand for her and she accepts it, symbolizing a shift in their relationship.
Here, Feyre is staring at their linked hands, both coated in blood, and she realizes that she is just as much of a beast as he is. She killed 2 Naga. She is the Princess of Carrion. Indeed, he killed 2 Naga as well. He's the High Lord. But Tamlin does give Feyre his tunic, and despite having a near-death experience, she is, quote, ignoring how easily I could see the cut of his muscles beneath his white shirt, the way the blood soaking it made them stand out even more. This is not the last time in this stretch of chapters that blood will stick to Tamlin's shirt and it will turn her on. Just saying.
No king shame in here. No shame.
No king shame.
whatever she's into.
No king shame. At least she's coming alive right now. That's all I can say. Feyre then looks to Tamlin and says, quote, thank you, not just for this, for saving my life, I mean. This has a lot more meaning to it. She is not just thanking him for the Naga right now, of course. He saved her life also by taking her out of the human lands, out of starvation and poverty. Whether she knows it or not, she is thanking him for saving her in this way.
She also notes that she appreciates that he even thinks that she's worth saving. Feyre has such a negative inner voice, and she doesn't think that she's worth much, and no one really cares if she lives or dies, except apparently the High Lord of the Spring Court. And it carries weight, and it's part of the start of her shift towards her inner healing.
Sexy blood muscles, that's right. Now, I do want to note on my italics watch here, the word worth is in italics, that she's even worth saving. This is so sad. Of course, Feyre is worth saving. She is a living, breathing human, but she sadly thinks so little of herself that she's surprised that someone so important would come to save little old her. It breaks my freaking heart. I also want to notice that in just a few months, she will be of equal status of this High Lord here. She will be the High Lady of the Night Court. So this worth here is her inner worth changes so drastically in this series. And yes, it is really Rhysand who, I'm not going to say brings it out of her. He teaches her how to bring it out in herself. And I think that's such an important distinction that we're going to talk a lot about in ACOMAF. But all of this together makes it so obvious to Feyre in her mind that the Suriel's words, "stay with the High Lord," seem like the smartest thing to do. Now, the last thing I want to note on this scene is as they're walking back to the Spring Manor, Feyre doesn't ask Tamlin anything about how many Naga he killed before he came to save her because, quote, "I didn't detect a trace of triumph in him, but rather a deep, unending sort of shame and defeat." Again, these two in this book are so very similar and have very similar burdens.
And he feels shame and defeat that he failed in protecting his lands. That was how I understood this part here. The Naga, they should not have been this far into his territory, but they were, and he absolutely blames himself.
Oh, I like that take, yes. Feyre is really starting to get out of her own shell. And personally, for me, something that gets me out of my shell is traveling. And my honeymoon to Italy, France, and Monaco is coming up this year. We just bought our tickets. I'm so excited. So I've been learning Italian while Brett has been learning French, and we're getting better and better every single day. Babbel can help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Imagine what I'll be able to do by September.
Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. With Babbel, you know that the lessons you're taking are designed by real people for actual real conversations.
Something that I was really nervous about when I started learning Italian was knowing more of like the real life conversations. Like for instance, how to order food, something I'm planning to do a lot of in Italy. Also how to ask for directions. I'm not very good at knowing where I am, and so much more. And Babbel was crafted for these types of conversations. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your accent and pronunciation, something I need a lot of. Thanks, Babbel.
Me too. Join over 16 million other subscribers and give Babbel a try. All 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee.
Here is a special and limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for Fantasy Fangirl fans at babbel.com/FF. Get 55% off at babbel.com/FF, spelled BABBEL.com/FF. Rules and restrictions may apply. Alice is helping Feyre get ready for the evening. We learned that Alice's sister and her mate, Alice's sister's mate, were murdered 50 years ago, so Alice became the caregiver for her 2 nephews. We'll get the full story later about how Alice was originally from the Summer Court and her family was killed when Amarantha arrived, but here's a little Reader's Digest version. She escaped to the Spring Court with her nephews, where Tamlin took them under his protection and hid the boys while Alice requested to help out at the manor. Days after her arrival, though, the entire court was invited to the masquerade under the mountain, and the curse was placed on them all. Poor Alice.
That is some really bad luck for Alice. Just a few days later, and it's like, oh yay, I get to go to the onboarding party, woohoo! And then boom, everything happened.
The onboarding party.
It's like when you join a new company like a few days before the big Christmas party, and it's like, yay, I get to go to the Christmas party and meet everybody, and it's gonna be so much fun. And then this just is a total disaster.
And then you get a mask stuck to your face for 50 years. I hate it when that happens. Feyre asks in regards to Alice's nephews if fairy children age differently. The answer is yes. Some kinds of fairies, like the Urisk and the High Fae, do age differently. I mean, Rhysand is 500 years old and he looks like he's 25. But the Urisk, for instance, don't reach adulthood until they're 75. So how old is Alice then? Because it's inferred. It's never outrightly stated, but it's highly inferred that she is slightly on the older side. But maybe that's something we, as the fandom, have just decided. I think the only like real piece of evidence we have there is she says like, dead chicken's my sagging ass at one point. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure
I was going to say, yeah.
But how old do you think she is?
Definitely more than 500 years.
Absolutely.
Like I mean, yeah, definitely more than that. Yeah. And it's so interesting. And we don't have full clarity on how the High Fae age, but we are going to dive into that at a later time because there's some really interesting nuggets of information that we can draw from and make some assumptions there.
Totally. I also love that Alice says children are more precious than jewels or gold. The Summer Court, where she originally hails from, is known for praising such finery, and they hold jewels in such high esteem that they even have a jewel, aka the blood ruby, sent to their enemies as a fuck you. They send this like robin-sized egg jewel as this message to these people. I love that Alice makes this comparison here because it does mean so much more coming from a Summer Court fairy. But Alice gives our Feyre one more piece of extremely helpful info. Dead chickens are like a B- with the Suriel, but a new robe, it will grovel at your feet. The Suriel, they like to be in fashion, and this is good to know because Feyre will need this info in a dire moment when her mate, she doesn't know it yet, is on the brink of death. Thank God she had a cloak handy, or else I'm pretty sure Rhysand would be dead.
Oh, that's not funny.
Now, Lexi, guess where we go after this?
Where, Nicole?
The dining room! Feyre is getting much more comfortable talking to these two males, especially in the dining room, because it's basically where they hang out all the time. When Lucien compliments her, telling her she looks lovely, by the way, I can almost hear Tamlin's jealousy meter going up when Lucien says this. Feyre says, I thought fairies couldn't lie. Which, pause. This is so sad. Our girl Feyre, it's time for you to get some confidence. I'm so excited for book 2 because literally Lucien says you look lovely. And Feyre thinks he's lying. God, that kills me.
And then Lucien delightfully informs her that, of course, fairies can lie. What are you talking about? We also learn that iron doesn't do shit to them.
Which, I'll be honest, I was really annoyed reading this the first time. I love it when magic systems are set up and the rules are laid out and it's really clear, it's black and white, it makes sense. And then when they change or they're like, oh, well, that's not true, I get so annoyed and I feel like I've been lied to. I feel like it's a personal vendetta. Obviously, I've made peace with it, maybe, but it is still a pet peeve of mine.
That is so interesting because I actually love this revelation here. And I'm the lore stickler. Like you all know, and again, no spoilers here, but from Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, there is something in particular that happens that really grinds my gears. And if you know, you know. But for this, it was from the humans' understanding that iron repels fairies and that fairies can't lie. And this actually really reveals how little they know about fairies and its further world-building device. And I'll just say this, for how often Feyre thought fairies can't lie, I was like, oh, I bet they can. And this is not an accurate thing that the humans think. Like the way that it was just plugged in so frequently, I was like, okay, I got an alert going on right now here for all the watchers, for anybody watching my YouTube here. I'll say it again. This shows just how little humans really know about fairies. And it's a world building device in itself by the realization that this isn't in fact true. Plus, let's just be honest, how boring would this story be if the fairies can't lie?
I don't know. I think that could do some cool writing with SJM of like workarounds and stuff, but I've made peace with it, I promise.
I have a slightly unhinged theory here. Do we think Moore had anything to do with this fairies can't lie and her power of truth? We'll talk a lot more about her power when we get time to it because, quite frankly, I'm still very confused by her actual truth abilities. I'm not even going to go down that road right now. She was friends with the mortal queens and she fought alongside the humans back 500 years ago during the war. Maybe something from her made the humans think fairies can't lie. I don't know. It's just an interesting connection worth throwing out there into theory land.
I love your unhinged theories so much because they actually do make a lot of sense. Unlike some of mine.
Well, that's a fun theory, Nicole.
Fun theory. That was a good theory, Lexi. There you go. But Tamlin admits that they never willingly lied to her. Willingly is in italics. You're welcome. Wow, that willingly is also like a neon sign in its italics because even though they couldn't tell her about Amarantha at this point, they're still doing a pretty good job of working around it. I do want to give them a lot of credit here. Like reading the page, I'm like, do they ever actually lie? I guess like Blythe is not a person, like Amarantha is a fairy person, high queen, whatever. But I do give them a lot of credit for the workarounds that they're doing because it doesn't feel like they're lying, at least up until this point. Now, Lucian, in his wingman era, leaves the dining room before dessert. This isn't as good as his, I have somewhere very important to be. That's going to happen in a few chapters. But this gives Timmy Tam and Feyre the opportunity to do some getting to know each other. Tamlin's flirting, it's gotten a lot better. It's not quite there yet, but I think it's back to its B plus minus, or maybe just B neutral. I'm not sure. He asks her.
Maybe just a B.
I think it's just a B. He asks her if she's feeling better, which is a great start. Always ask the girl how she's feeling. That's always a good place to start. After asking her why she was in the woods, she admits that she heard legend about a creature who would answer all of your questions, aka Google. And quote, this kills me. Tamlin flinched as his claws shot out, slicing his face, but the wounds closed as soon as they opened, leaving only a smear of blood running down his golden skin, which he wiped away with the back of his sleeve. Smooth Tamlin. I do wonder why her going to catch the Suriel and gleaning information from Google caused him to have his claws literally punch out so much out of his control that he actually bitch slapped his own face. Was he worried about her because she put herself in danger and he can't stand the idea when she does that? Or was there something that he didn't want her knowing about the curse yet? Or was he worried about her getting a different sort of information? Because he goes on to ask, quote, and did it tell you what you wanted to know? And this is what Feyre says in her inner monologue. I wasn't sure he was breathing.
And then when she confirms that she caught it, that's where his concern shifts to, oh my God, what did it tell her? Because again, I'm leaning toward the Suriel being able to say more on the truth behind the Blythe than anyone else in the Spring Court. And Tamlin doesn't want her to know what's really up. I'm curious, like if she was to find out from someone else like the Suriel, again, this is me totally just assuming that the Suriel can share more information than anyone in the Spring Court is literally able to say. I'm curious if there would be any repercussions if Feyre did find out about the curse from someone else. Again, this is assuming that the Suriel can talk about more than anyone else in the Spring Court. And what if she was to find out about the curse and the real intentions behind Tamlin and Lucian and all of them? And that's probably what he's actually scared about, because maybe he doesn't know if the Suriel is able to say more. And if so, then it's like, oh my God, what the hell did it tell you? Because he's got a really big secret that he's not able to say.
I'm going to throw one other option. I love where you're going. I'm going to throw one other option here. You know when your friend hangs out with your crush and you're like, oh my God, did he say anything about me? Did he say anything? And you're like trying to glean information. This also might be Tamlin being like, did it tell you? Did it find, like, I can't tell you, but was it able to tell you? Like almost relieved at the idea that the Suriel would have been able to tell her something that he couldn't.
But I will counter that with, would that make his claw punch and bitch slap him? Because I think that his claws would punch out if he found out she knows about the King of Hybern and like that deceiver, the commander there, because she's getting way close to the truth. And then there's more of that fear. And I don't think there's anger there, but there is that fear.
Well, what if the claw watch is instead of like fear, frustration, what if it was shock? Like, because what if I do have a theory going that his claws are any heightened emotion. It's not only anger or frustration, because later when they sleep together for the first time, his claws do come out and he uses it in a very sexual way to rip her underwear open. But like maybe it's only when he feels any sort of heightened emotion that he feels that. Now, to counter my own point, he might have, in that same scene that I just mentioned, he might have been like, this is a kink, and like, let me just go ahead and like control this and do this on my own. But I could see it like be of shock instead of only fear. Now, Tamlin does take an L with a quote, I'd start shouting, but today was punishment enough. And he also goes on to express that he cannot believe a human girl caught a Suriel. Tamlin, dude.
Power dynamic. That's all I have to say. He treats her like, again, I'm a lot nicer about Tamlin in these stretches of chapters in this book than I ever will be moving forward. But in this instant, he is treating her like a child who needs to be punished. And that just goes right back into their ultimate power dynamic that is all through these pages here. Very subtly, as it is their love story, but it is there.
But Feyre does come back with a true Elle Woods moment, with a What? Like it's hard? She says literally, quote, is it supposed to be hard? I just have a slow clap for Fae-vorite moment. That's just so good. So what grade is Tamlin at right now, do you think?
I mean, he was getting to be a little bit, that power dynamic part there with the starting shouting and treating her like a child. That went down to a D.
Okay, we're at
in
the
my
D.
opinion, that went down to a D.
Well, it's about to go down even more because Tamlin takes out her list of words that she threw away, and he clearly wants it to be something that they can connect over. But what he does not realize, or he didn't use his brainy brain to realize, is that Feyre holds so much shame around not being able to read. I mean, earlier when he tells her, I can help you write to your family, she literally cuts him off and says, leave me alone. So Tamlin put two and two together, my guy. It does make me look at the difference, though, however, between when Rhys offers to help her, and don't get me wrong, she still fights it at first because there is that shame there still, absolutely. But he appeals to her with a why it's so important for her to learn how to write, which eventually gets her to cave and start using him as a mentor reluctantly, but she does nonetheless. Whereas Tamlin here associated his offer with something that she was deeply embarrassed by and deeply ashamed by, her list of words that she didn't know. And honestly, I'd leave it there. But then Tamlin follows this up with a very on topic, do you even know how to laugh? I don't know, Tamlin. Have you tried cracking a joke or making her feel comfortable enough to open up? My guy.
Nicole, you're going to make me defend Tamlin again. Okay.
I'm sorry. So he has gone down to an F in my book right now. Please make him go up.
We're talking about effort. No, okay. These grades are about his effort, not the result. And is an effort. I'm giving him a B+ here because he is, again, reaching out and trying. He is trying to understand and connect with her. And yes, it is falling flat. Please all know that I really do love Rhysand, and this is just me being in book one head, okay? Tamlin has a point. Feyre doesn't know how to laugh. She has these brick walls around her emotions, and he's making effort after effort to connect. And yes, sometimes it is very poorly, and he does call her a human and all of that, but besides the point, she just keeps shooting him down because she is determined to be miserable. And she absolutely has her reasons. However, she's been so miserable, so preoccupied with simply surviving for so long that laughter does not come naturally, which is why the way that she's blossoms in this book is so meaningful. She's learning how to laugh in the spring court. Of course, that laughter and healing are completely taken away from her under the mountain. So in ACOMAF, it's not going to be the same kind of healing journey. But right here, it's learning how to laugh in this book versus remembering how to laugh in ACOMAF. And so I just got to say, Tamlin has a point because she doesn't know how to laugh, and he's kind of calling her out on it right now, where it's like, hey, we can be nice to each other here, okay?
Fair. I see where you're going, but I want to look at the context around this conversation because he just brought out a list of something that is one of her deepest shame points. And he was like...
And he doesn't know that.
Does he?
And again... He is not the sharpest tool in the shed, and therefore he does not know that.
I hear you. Okay, I'll give you that. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's also not used to working hard. But the fact that he phrases the question with, do you even know how to laugh?
Yeah, the delivery is bad.
It's terrible.
It's him trying to extend a hand to her and be like, I'm trying here. Give me something.
Well, she does. After he gives her a little bit more, because he does mention, and this is where he uses his brain, proud of you, Tamlin. Tamlin mentions how 500 years ago, fairies and humans fought alongside each other, and Feyre asks if he was one of them. However, no, he was not. He was too young to understand what was going on or even pick a side, which makes sense. He was much younger than the Bat Boys and more. But he mentions how if he was older, he would have fought against the slavery for the humans. And this is against his father and the rest of his family. And Feyre thinks something really interesting. Quote, I wasn't sure if I would do the same. My priority would be to protect my family, and I would have picked whatever side could keep them the safest. This is very Night Court thinking here. And you know what, Lexi? I will give this to you. This is very Slytherin thinking. Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
The Night Court, they put on these roles, and they're able to play a role, any role that would keep those around them the safest. I mean, literally look at Rhysand for what he's been doing for the past 49 years. It's nothing but this exact thing to keep his family safe. This shows that Feyre's not 100% good. It shows that she's got layers. It also shows, and it sets us up to believe that she will be able to handle the Court of Nightmares role because it's, again, just putting on a different hat. I love lines like this because it's just like, she's a little morally gray, and I love her for that.
Are you saying she's willing to be ambitious, ruthless, and cunning to protect those she loves? Yeah. 25% Slytherin. Absolutely.
I'll give you 30% even. I'll up it to 30%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. In fact, when we were texting, when I was reading book one, which I will absolutely release those screenshots there because it is quite the journey. I'll say that. I was like really mad at Feyre. I did not like her in book one, actually. And I was just screaming from the top of my lungs that she was a Slytherin. Not saying that Slytherins are bad. I have brother-in-laws and my whole husband's side of the family are Slytherins. I love them. They're wonderful.
They're the best.
But she is really and truly not always a likable character. Now, in our deep dive, I'm really starting to love and appreciate her in a whole new way. And finally, Tamlin recognizes the importance of telling Feyre the full extent of how he is taking care of her family. Finally, Jesus Christ, dude.
He tells her that they are safe, that they have no memory of Tamlin oh-yeah-ing into their cottage. And they think that a long-lost wealthy aunt called on Feyre to help her on her deathbed. They also do know that there is a threat from Prythian and they should run at any warning signs. I gotta give it to Tamlin. Maybe I'll bump him back up to a B here. Because yes, he does glamour their memories, which is a huge violation. But he does take care of them better than Feyre was able to. And this is finally clicking for her that she is fully freed from her mother's promise. Well, kind of. It works for all except one. Nesta, with her iron-willed mind, does not fall for the glamour. And we'll talk about this a lot more when Feyre goes back to the human lands. I do want to point out that even Rhys fell for Tamlin's glamour in this book, but not Nesta. Honestly, impressive. I'm so proud of our girl Nesta. Now, there could be another reason, but we will talk about that more when Feyre goes back to the human lands. Mwahaha.
And Feyre has such an on-par reaction for her character. At first, she's angry and defensive that he violated her family's memories. How dare Tamlin puppeteer humans like that? But then the more she thinks about it, the more she realizes, hey, this is actually for the best. It's for her family's own good. It's the most airtight solution to keeping them safe. And that's ultimately what's most important to her. With the realization that her vow to her mother is truly fulfilled, you can read the shift in Feyre's POV, like literally like right there on the page. I love it so much. She wonders what's left for her. And immediately she starts describing the colors and lights and shapes. I'm just smiling so big just thinking about this. The need for survival is melting, leaving her free to tap into that artist's mind. I know I've been talking about that every single episode, to the point where she admits that she does like to paint to Tamlin. It's such a sweet and very, very vulnerable moment for her.
Speaking of vulnerabilities, Timitam, after rejection, and rejection some more, he finally gets his yes. He mentions how there is a gallery in this house and how he would love to show it to her the day after tomorrow. But after he puts the ask out there, quote, he rubbed at his neck, faint color creeping up those cheeks, more alive and warm than I'd seen him yet. And then he says, please, it would be my pleasure. Homeboy is nervous and it's kind of cute. Remember, I was a Tamlin stan when I first read this, so I am trying to look at it through that lens as well. Tamlin, he is an introvert. He is a high lord who is not used to having to ask people to do things, and this is way out of his comfort zone. I am very proud. I will give Tamlin A for effort, A+ for effort, for sticking his neck out again after getting rejected a lot. Playing a slight devil's advocate, he does not have much of a choice because if he wants to save his entire court, he's going to have to do this again and again and again. But I'm going to overlook that motivation right now.
I do think it's adorable how they're both starting to genuinely smile, and Feyre even compares Isaac to Tamlin. Poor Isaac. You can't compare him to a High Lord. Isaac never made her catch her breath, even just a little. Yep, our girl is starting to catch some feelings in a way she has never ever experienced before.
This is the point of ACOTAR that I just start to drink up their love story. And you know what else you can drink that will make you just feel so good on the inside? AG1. I've been hearing about AG1 for years. So when they became a sponsor on the podcast, I'm literally not going to lie, I jumped up and down. And it has truly held up to the hype. Since drinking AG1 daily, I have felt more sustained energy throughout the day, especially on these long recording days. My stomach has felt less bloated, my skin has gotten brighter, and more. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, but it is a powerful, healthy habit that is also powerfully simple. It's just one scoop mixed in water once a day, every day.
I've tried a lot of supplements over the years, but I have not been able to find the right mix and match that doesn't upset my sensitive tummy. This is why AG1, it's such a game changer for me. Just one daily scoop of AG1 covers my nutrient gaps and supports my mental and physical health, and it takes just 60 seconds every morning, which you know I need quick and easy with 2 toddlers to care for in the mornings.
AG1 is a supplement we trust to provide the support our body needs daily, and that's why we're so excited to have them as a partner for the show. If you want to take ownership of your health this year, it starts with AG1.
Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/FFG. That's drinkag1.com/FFG. Check it out.
Feyre has yet another dream that is so heavy with foreshadowing. She dreams of the Suriel. She dreams of the Naga. And, quote, a pale, faceless woman dragging her blood-red nails across my throat, splitting me open bit by bit. She keeps asking for my name, but every time I try to speak, my blood bubbled out of the shallow wounds in my neck, choking me. And I mean, in so many ways, this does happen. She may be faceless now, but we will learn soon that this she is indeed Amarantha. But these are 2 different occasions. Number 1, Amarantha does ask her for her name, but she threatens Lucian's life when she's trying to get it out of her.
And then she has Feyre beaten before throwing her in the dungeon. Then she really tortures her before snapping her neck and killing her.
I also find it fascinating that she dreams of Amarantha's torture right before someone who is a direct victim of said torture enters the house. Speaking of which, Feyre hears screams from downstairs, and she's familiar with these screams, like when she didn't make a clean kill and the animals suffered. God, that's so sad, and it's exactly what's happening here. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. This scene is heartbreaking. This fairy, who is described as blue-skinned, gangly, long onyx hair, gold veins, and as tall as Tamlin, but there's notable blood protruding from the stumps at his shoulder blades.
She, who we later learn is Amarantha, ripped off this fairy's wings, or at least she had them ripped or sawed off. Bottom line, it was torturous and purposefully extra painful to really show how sick this she is.
Now, I gotta get on my pedestal here because Timid Tam's gotta work on his bedside manner. He is a warrior, first and foremost, and a leader somewhere down the line. But a warrior is logical and knows when someone is past the point of no return. But him saying, keep still, you'll bleed out faster, in my eyes is an L for Timmy Tam, but the L's don't stop there. Tamlin commands Lucian, who is lost in absolute horror, to basically wake the fuck up, my guy. Lucian was in a very familiar situation and is experiencing very real PTSD from when Amarantha took his eye and when he was forced to watch the female he loved be murdered. Tamlin is not exactly an empathetic person because, quite frankly, he's not even in touch with his own emotions or have even control over his emotions most of the time. So it's not surprising that Tamlin is, I'm going to say, oblivious to his friend spiraling and watching this unfold. So much so that Lucian then vomits and sprints out of the room. What is your opinion, Lexi?
Pushing you off the pedestal and stepping up right now because, hold up, I read this so differently than you do, which is fun. It's always fun that we have such different perspectives. But Tamlin, he's murmuring softly to the fairy. It's described as gentle in a way Feyre hasn't heard before. That's as good as bedside manner gets. And in this moment, I'm thinking that he hasn't had a chance to assess the damage to this fairy as he's trying to see if there's anything that can be done. He's warning the fairy to stay still. Now, could it have been a tiny bit nicer? Yes, but he's frantically trying to help this fairy here. It's only when he realizes the wounds aren't clotting, when he's able to fully see the damage, that's when he knows that there is nothing to be done. And that's when he switches tactics from trying to, I'll say, help the fairy to comforting in the fairy's final moments. And I don't see Tamlin being oblivious to Lucien at all. He gives him a quiet command, trying to pull him out of it. Totally understandable. That's exactly what anybody would have done in that situation. And then he understands when Lucien can't be in the room. Like, he doesn't try to call after him, or like he almost like lets him be dismissed and like do his own thing. And it's like, okay, like I get it. He empathizes for his emissary in the next chapter when he's explaining to Feyre about Lucien's horrific past that made the scene too difficult for him. And I'll just say he's showing more empathy in this scene than we've really seen yet. It's showing that he cares for lesser fairies, and he's trying to take care of the little guy. Amarantha knows this about Tamlin, and she's taunting him by dropping this tortured fairy off on his borders, knowing how much it pains him. And he was found on the borders, and he was brought to Tamlin, or Tamlin went to him or something like that, and Tamlin is now carrying him back and assessing for whatever the damage is to see if there's any way to help him. And unfortunately, there's not.
I see your points. They're valid points. I'm going to stay on my pedestal, though. You stay on yours.
Okay, fine.
Now, Feyre, who in my eyes does have a bedside manner, steps up to the plate. She takes one of his hands, telling him that it'll be all right, stroking his liquid night-colored hair. I love that even in this like horrific moment, she sees things as night and describes them that way. And this is just what guts me. She tells the fairy that he will get his wings back. And he asks, "You swear?" Oh.
And Feyre wishes she could say more than empty promises. Vows are so sacred to her, and she feels awful that she is giving him an empty vow. But then she does hope that maybe it's not empty, and once the fairy dies, he gets his wings back. Oh, my heart. This scene really is so sad.
Tamlin takes his other hand and recites the fairy prayer, though, which sounds familiar to us readers because it is the same prayer that the female fairy at Feyre's third trial recites to herself right before Feyre drives the dagger into her heart.
That's going to be a really tough episode. We might need to have some wine for that episode just to get through it.
I will accept that. I will absolutely accept that. Because I'm pretty sure you, even on rereads, refuse to read the third task.
I won't read. I have not reread that scene since I very first read it. And it was, anyway, we'll get to that part. I couldn't sit still. I was listening on the audiobook and I was absolutely freaking out. And I have not listened or read it since.
Well, we will have to find the text messages from that point because the text that I received from you, I was like, is she okay?
I was not okay.
You were not okay. Speaking of people who are not okay, after this prayer, the fairy sighs his final breath. This scene, it's often looked over because there's so much else that happens in this book, especially when we hit Under the Mountain, but it is wildly important for many reasons. Number one, we see how much Feyre has wildly warmed up to fairies, especially when we think about who she was at the opening chapter of this book. But now she thinks about this fairy's face, quote, "So unearthly, so inhuman. Who would be so cruel to hurt him like that?" That would not have been how she described it in chapter 1. It would have been so unearthly, so inhuman, get the fuck out of my face. Number 2, though, we also see Tamlin start to realize A, how special and brave Feyre is, and B, the cure to the curse. He is basically seeing it happen in real time. He just may be able to get this human to fall in love with him and thus save his entire court.
We also see how much Feyre, when she's not in survival mode, values other life. This is who she is at her core, not who her survival instincts forced her to be. And reason number 4 why this scene is very important, Feyre wouldn't want to die alone either. As much as Feyre puts up walls with everyone, she is so scared of being alone. She doesn't want to be alone, but it's how her life has panned out so far.
And last but not least, number 5, we see yet again how in sync this version of Feyre and Tamlin are. When Feyre starts to fight back, saying that she wants to help bury the fairy, Tamlin refuses. And Feyre understands, thinking to herself that she too would have wanted to do it alone. Also important to note that during this moment, Feyre notices that there are no claws poking out of Tamlin, almost like he's void of emotion right now. And I think SJM is doing a really beautiful job of show, don't tell.
And when you say void of emotion, it's like the fight is out of him. There's
Exactly.
there's nothing in this moment to fight, to be angry at when the grief of death is just surrounding and feeling just like the weight of the world right now. Quote, "There was nothing to be done against this enemy, this fate, no one for him to fight. There's only resignation and defeat here, and those are not claw motions." Yes, I thought I was very clever when I saw that.
That was very clever. Good job. Then Tamlin asks her why she was so kind to this fairy and helped him pass, especially after Andrus. And Feyre says, quote, because I wouldn't want to die alone, because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy. This is horribly sad because as she's slowly dying over the 3 months under the mountain, Tamlin is not there to hold her hand. He is not there until literally he is holding her body after she died, and this is even after he has killed Amarantha. However, at the end of ACOTAR, Feyre and Rhys make a deal, which we will debate when that time comes, make a deal to die together. So while it's not quite holding your hand and a while after, it is a bond with her mate that she will not die alone. After her admission that she regrets killing Andrus and regrets that there's so much hate in her heart, Tamlin walks away without saying anything, by the way, just strolls on out of the conversation. But she thinks, quote, I watched every movement he made, the muscles of his body visible through that blood-soaked tunic. This is the second time she has noticed his muscle body because there is blood soaking his clothes. Proud, Feyre, proud.
His body. Feyre is really starting to let down her guard and feel her own emotions. Yes, she had internally realized she regretted Andrus's death and was sorry for it, but to convey it and really feel it so sincerely, especially to Tamlin, that's a huge step for her. And not only that, but she feels the guilt weighing on her where she has to truly explain how sorry she is, try to repair the damage that she has done.
This is also the first time in her inner monologue or out loud that she calls him Tam. Oh. Yes, in this moment it is in her head, but it further shows that he is getting into her good graces.
I love how after such a horrific night and quite honestly a rough few days, Tamlin is like, all right, everybody, pack up. We're going on a happy field trip. They've felt the weight of just too much death recently, and he knows exactly what to do to help Feyre. Chapter 18 is the real turning point in their relationship, with the last few days' events building up to it as they start letting down their guards with each other. We've talked so much about that already.
Tamlin has not been known as the talker so far in this book, but the fact that he's telling her that they're going on a field trip and he starts rambling is just it's a beautiful show don't tell moment from SJM of just how he is also letting his walls down.
And he takes her to the most beautiful place she's ever seen, a place that feels right to her, where her artist's mind can soak up all the colors, all the light, all the beauty. It's like as soon as Tamlin understood she loves to paint, he recognized this other side of Feyre and wants to help her embrace it too. By providing her with all the paint supplies she needs, by showing her the art gallery, by taking her to beautiful scenic places to get her creative juices flowing, and help her feel comfortable and safe to truly lean into what she wants.
I do love that she's having this out of body experience and he's like, it's just a Glen. Tamlin. Now I'm on my flower watch, friends. Feyre notices how the floor of the clearing was, quote, carpeted with swaying crocuses and snowdrops and bluebells. Crocuses symbolize cheerfulness, glee, and youthfulness. Snowdrops symbolize hope and new beginnings. Bluebells symbolize humility, gratitude, and everlasting love.
Wow.
Flower watch.
Wow. I love that. It's so cool. Grandma would be so proud of you with all of your flower
really
stuff.
embodied Grandma doing this, and I hope she is proud. We love you, Gram. When arriving at the Glen, Feyre has a moment where she could have sworn she heard singing. She will later, under Tamlin's magic, be able to hear a willow sing. But right now she's not under this magic, so I am curious how/why she can hear singing in the Glen. My best guess is to foreshadow Feyre's future high fae-ness, but what if she can also hear it because of that distant high fae blood that might be running through her veins?
I like to think of it as the glamour, how she kind of gets it's almost like when as soon as she starts leaving the manor, the further out she gets, the more ripples in the glamour there are. That was how I interpreted it.
Interesting. That logically makes a lot more sense. I like my high Fae blood theory, though.
I know. We'll find every little morsel of support for it. The results of Tamlin's efforts, they're really starting to show. Feyre makes a joke about Tamlin's beast form, and it's the first joke she's cracked all book. I personally don't know if I found the joke funny, but hey, our girl is trying, and I give her an A for effort.
Quote, the Suriel also said you liked being brushed, and if I'm a clever girl, I might train you with treats. That is sassy Feyre coming out to play, and I'm here for that. So I don't know about jokes, but it's definitely the sass that we know from Feyre.
And all right, Tamlin takes Feyre to the Pool of Starlight. Oh boy, let's roll up our sleeves and get ready to deep dive into theory land here. Deep dive into the Pool of Starlight for the theory, get it?
Not as good as Feyre's brush joke, though.
Fair. We could honestly do an entire episode on all the theories about this Pool of Starlight, so I'm going to do my best to summarize the most popular theories within the ACOTAR series, aka no Maasverse here, without getting completely carried away. And you betcha we'll somehow, someway bring this Pool of Starlight back up in the future. But before I dive into the depths of Theoryland, let's review why everyone is curious about this Pool of Starlight and why there are theories around it in the first place. Well, for one, it is a pool of starlight in the spring court. What is a pool of starlight doing in the spring court in the first place? Here's what we know about this pool of starlight. Let's kick it off with the fact that Tamlin doesn't know what it means because he never asked and no one ever explained. This haunt was also his favorite as a boy, so we can probably safely assume this pool of starlight has been around since before he was born, or at least since he was very, very, very young. There's a few theories that I'll bring up here that don't quite fit this timeline, but it's still important to be aware of. You can also safely swim in this pool of starlight, but it's still fairly shallow. It's like, swimmable, but you can kind of like wade through it, right? Legend claims that you'd be happy until your last breath if you drink it. Why did no one drink? I would have totally drank it. I would be like, I would totally down to be happy. Me too. The liquid is delightfully warm, and no, not because anyone peed in it. It's also described as not water, but something smoother and lighter, and no, not oil either, because it's purer and thinner than that. It feels like being wrapped in warm silk. Oh my gosh, how lovely. And it makes you feel like you're floating in air.
You know that feeling of like diving into warm laundry and just like letting warm laundry sit on top of you? That sounds like this, but times a million. I want this to be an attraction at ACOTAR Land.
I want to hear more about this ACOTAR Land. All right, so let's start talking about the theories. Number one, the Pool of Starlight is a portal to the Night Court. Like it serves as a portal from one end of Prythian to another. There's a lot of speculation that this Pool of Starlight is indeed connected to the Night Court. Understandably, because Starlight, Night Court, what the heck is this Pool of Starlight doing in the Spring Court? We know that there are underwater waterways to travel through the middle, even into the mountains of surrounding courts. What if this is one of those magical waterways? It's also described as a river, so I don't know if portal is the right word here, but you know what I mean. All right, theory number two. Lost spirits from Starfall end up in this Pool of Starlight. The description of this liquid is similar to the starlight that splatters on Feyre's face during Starfall in Mist and Fury. Now, it is important to note that the spirit splooge is pale green light, while this pool is silvery sparkling liquid. Reese also mentioned that there has been less and less of these spirits during Starfall, so maybe when they're on their yearly migration to wherever they go, some end up in the Spring Court and make up this Pool of Starlight. Speaking of making up this Pool of Starlight, that would be a lot of spirit splooge to fill the whole pool. As much as it seems there's... Why are you laughing? Spirit splooge. It's true. So quick side note about the splooge. So once when Jake and I lived in Sacramento, we went to San Francisco for the day and we ended it with a really nice restaurant. Like we were at a really nice restaurant and we were at the bar and they had some stuff brought up to us and it was like one of those like little like ball things and I cut it open and I might have been drinking a lot that day. And I said very, very loudly in that nice restaurant, "It's splooged!"
Just when I thought I couldn't love you anymore.
That was when Jake was like, "I think we need to go home."
See, that's what I would have been like, I think we need to get married.
As much as it seems like there should be a connection between Starfall's migrating spirits and this Pool of Starlight, I personally don't think that they're directly related. I think that it's really cool that there are the similarities, but probably not directly related. Theory number 3, we know that magic grows in the spring court. So this pool of starlight could be literal liquid magic like groundwater for, I know that's not a very exciting term, but very well could be. This is my personal favorite possibility. Yes, it's the most practical, but anyway. Tamlin and the Spring Court, they generate magic on Calamai, and we know that it goes right back into the land. So Calamai replenishes, so to speak, this magical pool. It's like this pool of starlight is part of the magical circle of life. The land relies on this magical liquid, and maybe it's even in that fairy wine because the grapes are literally infused with it, and that's partly why Fae-vorite is so happy on fairy wine during the summer solstice.
Ooh, I like that one.
Theory number 4, which is kind of part of theory number 3 too, because it's on a similar note, the Daglin were said to drink the magic of the land like wine. Who is the Daglin, you ask? They were the beings who were near gods and monsters that created everyone in this world. They ruled for millennia, enslaving the Fae and humans. The contents of this pool of starlight could very well be that liquid magic that they drink. I'm going to go with a big old yes. This is definitely, I think that the pool of starlight is connected to this, or whether it's on purpose or not, but I love that idea there. Theory number 5, while this one doesn't fit within the timeline of Tamlin coming here as a boy, this is still one of the most popular theories out there. The pool of starlight is connected to Rhys's mom and/or sister. There's multiple variations of this, including one theory that Tamlin and Rhys's sister were mates. Rhys's sister gifted Tamlin the pool of starlight as a mating present, and this was the main reason Tamlin's father targeted Rhys's sister to kill her if he didn't want them together. Another version is that Tamlin helped Rhys's mom and sister escape and they aren't actually dead, and this is somehow connected to the pool of starlight, which would mean that their heads shipped to Rhys would have had to be like a glamour or something. I personally and regretfully believe that his mom and sister are dead. I'm so sorry. But the most prominent version of this theory is that this is the location where Tamlin burned Rhys's sister and mother's alluring wings, and as a result, the pool of starlight emerged. Because the land absorbed their power, especially Rhys's sister's, who was, of course, the child of the High Lord of the Night Court, causing a pool of starlight to appear where her wings were burned. On a similar Rhys note, there's speculation that he gifted Tamlin this pool of starlight when they were young and friends with each other. Again, I don't think Rhys is personally involved because the timelines just don't quite add up, but I like the idea behind it. Theory number 7, and this one just kind of gave me a chuckle when I was deep in theory land diving, and it's really dark and it makes me worry about what I find funny, but it's that the pool of starlight is actually Rhys's tears from when he found out about his mother and sister's deaths, and Tamlin was like, "Wahaha, fuck you, I'm gonna bottle these up and go swim in your tears." That's the theory.
That's a fun theory.
That one I really just threw in there for shits and giggles. But
now, I do want to point out that this also could just be foreshadowing Faber's fate in the Night Court. This is a pool of stars that is supposed to make you the happiest you could ever be. So this literally could all just be foreshadowing and we're losing our fucking shit over it.
But it's a pool of starlight. It's magic liquid in a magical land. I may think it's the least exciting theory where it's essentially groundwater for the Spring Court's magical fruition and wine for the long ago Daglin, but at least it's more exciting than happiness foreshadowing. I'm going to stop for now. Stay tuned for more in today's Maasverse Madness. The pool of starlight theories might have almost driven us to madness this episode, and to be honest, it's not the first time that's happened. I am always banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to cook and eat healthy. And both are easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in only 2 minutes. You have over 35 options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long.
I have been so excited to try Factor. I've always struggled with meal prepping. It's not my vibe, but with Factor, I have perfectly portioned restaurant quality meals in just 2 minutes. And Factor is flexible to your needs. Get as much or as little as you need by choosing your meals every week. Plus, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime.
And trust the Fantasy Fangirls to do the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Tasty, affordable, and convenient. Oh my goodness, it does not get better than that.
Factor has given an amazing deal for our listeners. Head to factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 and use code FANTASYFANGIRL50 to get 50% off. That's code FANTASYFANGIRL50 at factormeals.com/FANTASYFANGIRL50 to get 50% off. So theories or no, we do have to talk about the scene and the beginning of the spiciness it brings into our story. I love that Tamlin, who has not been a good flirt. His effort has been there, but the delivery has not. Suddenly ramps it up to like a 25. He's unbuttoning his shirt and says, quote, "Don't you want to know what it's like?" And Feyre's like unsure if he means swimming in starlight or swimming with him. I 100% think he means swimming with him. And I think he's like, good job, Tamlin. That was really good. I think he's like patting himself on the back.
I say, man, we are just disagreeing all over the place because I don't think he's smooth enough to think he's talking about himself. Like, I definitely think he's talking about the pool of starlight. Listeners, can you tell I wrote pool of starlight in all caps in this whole outline?
We were so delirious writing this outline last night, I swear to God. Disagreement or no, after Feyre turns him down again, she starts to ask questions about Lucien, if he's all right. Again, I can just hear Tamlin's jealousy meter go up and up and up.
You are making me have to go to bat for Tamlin so much this episode because I think his words are soft as he explains what Lucien has been through. I didn't get the jealousy vibe in this moment whatsoever. Like, he knows he got the girl and he's keeping her. Boo on that. There, I squeezed in some Tamlin shade because he does not get to keep her because he does not own her.
I don't think he's jealous in this moment, but the seeds are being planted for him to eventually be so unhinged with thinking that she is choosing Lucien over him, Tamlin.
He makes it so obvious, though. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
Seed planting, like, that's the seed. Anyway,
what kind of spring court seeds are they, Nicole? Tell me about what the flowers represent.
They're foxglove, because apparently that's a flower. Anyway, we learn that Lucien is the youngest of 7 sons of the High Lord of the Autumn Court. Major air quotes there. But the Autumn Court is no pumpkin spice latte, friends. This place is cutthroat. Each of these sons have the possibility to inherit the title of High Lord. It is not always going to the eldest. Now, I do want to pause here real quick because in ACOTAR, it's clearly stated that Aerys is the heir to the Autumn Court as he is the eldest son. So I don't know what happened there, but it was a small inconsistency. But because Lucien had no desire to be High Lord, he gallivanted in his youth, making friends in all the courts and being with females that made his father pissed. But then Lucien fell in love with a fairy who his father deemed wildly inappropriate. And so his father killed her. That escalated quickly, while his brothers made Lucien watch. Beyond infuriated, Lucien left the Autumn Court, but 3 of his brothers went to go after him and kill him. Cool stuff. The Autumn Court has no chill. That's what I learned from this story. They have absolutely no chill. Only one of those brothers came back, however, because Lucien killed one and Tamlin the other since they were in the Spring Court at that point. Tamlin then appointed Lucien to emissary since he was such a social butterfly and had friends in all the courts.
Pointedly, Tamlin's not. Ain't that the truth? But seriously, this is one more nod to his introvertedness and, I'll say, moodiness. Plus, one of his only friends he ever had was Rhys in their younger years, and things didn't go so well between their families. I really also just need to say how sad I am that the Autumn Court just sucks, because I love Autumn, and I would totally want to live there. Wait, no, I also really want to live in the Winter Court. But spring would be pretty to visit, and I'd want a home in the summer court. I'm definitely a seasons gal too. I love them all.
Like, gotta catch
I love them all. But it's like, I also don't necessarily want to be in a solar court. I do want to be in a solar court, but I don't want to because I want to like really just like live in the seasonal court. Like when I'm there, just really immerse myself. I love them all, but especially autumn and winter, except not autumn in this instance because Lucien's brothers and supposed dad really suck. I will say, actually, Aerys is on probation. I just finished Silver Flames, and he is definitely on probation. Anyway, that was a nice little rant I went on.
Wanting to change the subject. Feyre asks what would happen if she drank the water in the pool of starlight. Tamlin tells her, quote, "Legend claims you'll be happy until your last breath. Perhaps we both need a glass." To which Feyre replies with, quote, "I don't think that entire pool would be enough for me. Tamlin calls this a joke and laughs, but this self-deprecating humor is so sad. Remember that conversation she had with her father where she said there's no such thing as hope. Feyre is hollow and she doesn't see a side of life where she could actually be happy. Tamlin even asks, what would be enough to make you happy, Feyre? And she blushes because she truly does not know. She never thought about what would make her truly happy, just, I'll say, peacefully content.
Yeah, it's like she's always dreamed so small because she's afraid to dream at all. Now there's new possibilities that she literally can't wrap her head around.
To the dreams that are answered, Reese.
Oh
my God, I just got chills. I can't wait.
Yeah. Mom saw that quote the other day and she's like, oh, that's so lovely. And I was like, oh yeah, like that's from the books that we're covering. She's like, oh, that's so nice. It's like, I know.
Maybe she'll read them. But I don't want her to listen to the podcast.
No, we don't want that.
But then Feyre decides to actually take him up on that swim. Feyre strips down to her modest underwear and Tamlin, again, cranking the meter up to 25, quote, slowly. So slowly. His eyes roved down, then up, as if he were studying every inch, every curve of me. And even though I wore my ivory underthings, that gaze alone stripped me bare. And right after this, Timmy Tam, eyes hungry and feral, unbuttons his clothes too. There it is. I hadn't read any spice before I read this book, and I will admit my eyes in this scene were wide. I hadn't quite had the awakening that comes with calamine, but it was the foxglove seeds were a planting.
This scene, it's really sweet. Whatever we ultimately think of Tamlin by the end of the series, right here in this moment, it is undeniably sweet. And, you know, like a lot of us, when we look back on our relationships with our exes, knowing that it might not have worked out very well, and we might hold some very strong lingering feelings, at least for me, I can think of quite a few where it's like, yeah, there were still really wonderful moments, you know, and there is that way to separate them. And that's exactly what we're doing here with this pool of starlight scene here. Is even though we are looking at him now as an ex, it still is a lovely memory that deserves its limelight here because they're being brave and they're opening up to each other. Tamlin's asking Feyre questions out of genuine curiosity. They let their guards down and she starts talking to him, like really talking to him in a way she never has with anyone. As she tells him about what happened to her family and her years in the woods, it's really, really sweet.
I think this might be one of my favorite scenes in the book. Like, it's just so beautiful. It's so beautifully written. And then last part of this stretch of chapters, riding back to the manor, Feyre and Lucien have their heart-to-heart moment. She admits to Lucien that she understands why he, quite frankly, doesn't like her and why he didn't warn her that the Suriel was as terrifying as the Suriel was. I can't believe that was still just this episode. Oh my God, that felt so long ago. And he admits that he hesitated when she screamed from the Naga attack. So as a peace offering, he gives her his hunting knife, asking her not to bury it in his back. These two from here on out have I think I can call it a friendship, so much so that Lucien Under the Mountain risks his life multiple times for her, whether it's, you know, healing her or yelling a direction from that the Midgard worm is coming at her. Feyre and Lucien have the kind of friendship that was never really in the environment to blossom and grow into what it could have been. She and him are tortured in their own way under the mountain, despite being thrown together multiple times. She flees from the spring court in Akamath, and then when she returns, he's hella sus when it comes to her. I am really excited for ACOTAR 6 or 5, whatever you want to call it, where we will hopefully get more insight from Lucien, and I would love some Lucien POVs because he is such a delightful and such a complex character that I'm excited to see those onion layers that he has. Last thing I want to say here is my Spice Watch, which Feyre, when discussing how her father sent their entire fortune on the 3 ships to Barat in order to pay off their debts. This is when she's with Tamlin in the study. What do you think was on these ships, Lexi?
There were spices.
There was invaluable spices and cloth, which I do want to do a quick side note. Barat translates to India, spelled a little bit different. There's an extra A in there, but I just thought that was a fun little note.
Whew. We made it. Now, while we did, of course, talk about a lot of foreshadowing already, let's turn our full focus onto foreshadowing to the rest of this book and other important moments in this whole series.
Feyre says that she'll just have to learn to write herself. Well, Feyre, darling, thanks to your most handsome High Lord, you will not have to do that undertaking alone. When Feyre is looking at the mural and sees the human armies going up against the Fae armies, we learn that these human armies, and we also know that there's some Fae in there too, included people like Rhysand, whose opening prologue chapter of ACOTAR is a scene from this very war.
Feyre is frustrated that Tamlin, Lucien, and Alice are doing their best not to answer her specific questions, so she's determined to find out herself. Well, there's obviously a big reason that they're not sharing info with her, because the curse literally prevents them from giving her the info she is looking for.
As Feyre is on her way to the Suriel, she passes by a pond and sees, quote, 4 shining female heads poking up from the bright water. Oh, hello, water nymphs. We will see you soon at the tithe.
I still think that, it's being able to see them through the glamour a little bit there, right?
Possibly.
Feyre reflects that Tamlin didn't act like the High Lord of Legend, who had, quote, sacrificed virgins and slaughtered humans at will. There is certainly some truth to this legend. In ancient times, Fae sacrificed people to the Kelpies, and considering the Kelpies unfortunately like women and children the most and like to do unspeakable things before killing them, it's a pretty safe assumption that it's the Kelpies whose virgins were sacrificed to.
Tamlin tells Feyre that he was nervous her father would have come after her, to which she responds with, he wouldn't have bothered, to which Tamlin says, yes, he would have. And in a way, he does, just way later. Good job, Timmy Tam. Feyre mentions how she likes to paint, and Tamlin says, paint outside, inside, on the roof, paint wherever you want. This house is too clean anyways. There is way more foreshadowing than I thought for Feyre painting the cottage in ACOTAR, and I'm so here for it. Before heading off to the Pool of Starlight, Feyre asks Tamlin where they're going, and he only answers with a smile. In ACOTAR, Feyre will ask Rhysand where they're going. Rhys also smiles, but then he gives her the information. To Valaris, the city of starlight. When discussing Lucian's ex-girlfriend, quote, he was certain the mating bond would snap into place soon. Well, it didn't because she died, but also because his mate had yet to be born. Hello, Elaine. As Tamlin is asking what would make Feyre happy, he offers up a suggestion of a garland of moonlight, just another tie to Feyre's future happiness in the Night Court.
Feyre is wearing modest ivory undergarments when she goes to take a swim with Tamlin in the Pool of Starlight. Let's just say her choice in undergarments is going to drastically change. So cute how modest she is right now.
Shouts to the Lacy Under Things store. I cannot wait to talk about that scene.
I want to see that fan art.
Oh, God. I'm sure that exists on the internet somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure there is too.
Alrighty, friends. We're not done with the Suriel yet. Every episode, Lexi is going to sip some tea with the Suriel and walk us through a world-building topic to better help us understand this world and the people in it. Lexi, I'm ensnaring you. What are we talking about today?
Today's Suriel Tea Time segment is all about Prythian geography and the 7 courts. I'm going to do my best to explain a map on a listening platform, so here goes. We're focusing today's geography lesson on Prythian, a large island east of the massive continent. And we're going to start at the southern tip and work our way up. That sounded dirty. Okay, anyway. The 7 courts are made up of the 4 seasonal courts and 3 solar courts. The seasonal courts are eternally in their designated season, and this magic is tied to their high lords. The solar courts, on the other hand, are more of a symbolic nature and adhere to the seasonal laws of nature. But it is said that the court's namesake time of day is most beautiful in that location. For instance, the night court has the most dazzling nights. Each court of Prythian is ruled by a high lord and has an insignia with a design that symbolizes the court. In the southernmost part of this large island, we have the mortal realm. This is where, obviously, the humans live, separated from the Fae. Unlike the continent where there are queens, Prythian's mortal realms do not have monarchy or royalty. They do, however, have something like aristocracy, like lords and ladies. Think about Elaine, who is engaged to the Lord's son. This magical barrier is invisible, but fairies can feel its presence. There are also holes in the wall to slip in and out, which a lot of fairies do, and it seems like the Children of the Blessed do as well. The Spring Court borders the wall and is the southernmost court in Prythian. Its High Lord is, of course, Tamlin. Its insignia is a blooming rose. How fitting. The Spring Court is a land of rolling green hills, lush forests, and clear bottomless lakes. It's like magic grows there, as we already talked about. There are no cities in the Spring Court, but we know of a large village less than 5 miles away from Tamlin's manor. It was destroyed by Amarantha, so it's not really relevant to our story at this time. We don't know a lot more about where people live in the Spring Court, and I think part of that is because we get Feyre's point of view and she is really isolated. All right, let's go back to our map here. North of the Spring Court are 2 courts with side-by-side borders. The Summer Court is on the west side. Tarquin is the High Lord of the Summer Court. He's also the youngest High Lord who came into his power while under the mountain after Amarantha killed the previous Summer Court High Lord. The Summer Court's insignia is an ocean wave. There are 4 cities in the Summer Court, including Adriata. When you're dubbed a mortal enemy of the Summer Court, you receive a blood ruby that makes great paperweights. Now let's turn our attention east to the Autumn Court. Baron rules the Autumn Court. He's the oldest and meanest High Lord of the 7. Its insignia is fall leaves. I know, shocking, right? Inhabitants of the Autumn Court tend to have hair of varying shades of red. Again, how fitting. Autumn Court has a reputation for being cutthroat and highly competitive, though wow, is it beautiful and oh so colorful. The Forest House is where the High Lord and his family live, located in the center of the territory. There are farmlands and fields, fertile valleys, and foothills that back up to the northern snow-capped mountains. Speaking of, north of the Summer and Autumn Courts, we have the Winter Court. Its High Lord is Callias, and its insignia is an ice shard in the shape of a wolf. Hello, Starks. The Winter Court is made up of towering, exquisite palaces. Sleighs pulled by reindeer are their preferred method of travel. How lovely! And they have giant white bears that stalk the realm for unwanted visitors and go into battle with their armies. Fun fact, the Winter Court uses white foxes to carry messages strapped to their vests. Hello, otters from Crescent City! And its theme song is Let It Go! I love the Winter Court. I don't care what anybody else says. I got you, Winter Court. Above the Winter Court is what's called the middle of Prythian. It's the unruled territory that divides the southern seasonal courts and the northern solar courts. The middle is considered a symbolic 8th court, and it's sacred to Prythian. The sacred mountain is in its center, which is where under the mountain, Amarantha's court for the past 50 years is located. The middle is also home to a forest called the Bog of Urid. As a whole, the middle is full of primal magic and has its own rules and laws. It's forbidden to map the middle beyond vague landmarks, so you can imagine all the secrets this territory holds if you dare to explore it on foot. Let's keep going north, everybody. The Dawn Court is the southernmost solar court and shares a border with the middle. Thesan rules the Dawn Court, and its insignia is a sun rising from between the mountains. The Dawn Court has multiple small cities that specialize in tinkering, clockwork, and clever things, and it has countrysides that stretch far. The colors of sunrise linger long into the day, and the air in this territory has a dewy freshness to it. Oh, how lovely! The Dawn Court is home to the feathered wing fae, the Peregrine. North of the Dawn Court is the Day Court. Hello, Helion, High Lord of the Day Court. We love you. Its insignia is the sun, because duh. The Day Court has 1,000 libraries that, unfortunately, Amarantha looted. But this is the home of vast knowledge. The Day Court has been responsible for archiving Prythian's knowledge of magic for centuries, and its people have a gift for inventing. This is also where the Pegasuses are. We gotta rep those Pegasuses. The Day Court has sweeping valleys and wheat fields. And last but definitely not least, the northernmost territory in Prythian is the Night Court. And the Night Court is by far the largest land with a whole lot of mountains. The Night Court is ruled by the most handsome High Lord, the most cunning High Lord, the most delicious High Lord, our one and only Rhysand. Its insignia is a mountain dotted with 3 stars. This territory uniquely has 2 courts. The Court of Nightmares, which is the public-facing court that everybody knows about. It's also known as the Hewn City, and folks, it is not a pleasant place at all. It is filled with fae who follow their own morals and disagree with their High Lord. They kind of rule themselves for the most part. And then we have the Court of Dreams, aka the City of Starlight, aka Valaris. But shh, Valaris has been kept a secret for more than 5,000 years, so we don't know anything about it yet, and nobody else does either. Don't worry, we'll talk so much more about the Night Court in a few books. Well, actually, we'll talk a lot more about all of these courts and their High Lords. This is just the basics right now.
I love you. And now let's finish off the ACOTAR only part of this episode with our favorite moments.
How Feyre thinks that the mural in the study is not meant for human eyes. I just love that so much. It's so true. It's a nice little nod to everything being in perspective and creating for a specific audience.
I love that Alice has a glass of hot chocolate for Feyre to wash away the horrors of the Suriel and Naga day. It is so reminiscent of Professor Lupin giving chocolates to Harry after facing off with the Dementors. I love Lucian. I love Lucian. He is such a mood. He is laying on a blanket in the Glen, drinking a bottle of champagne right from the bottle. I want to be his friend. I want to do this after a 2-episode recording week. That is going to be my way of winding down today.
And we already talked about this, but just plugging in one more time, the whole Pool of Starlight scene, partly because how it made a fandom go crazy with theories, but more so because this really is when we start seeing how this is indeed a love story. And no matter what we think of Tamlin after this book, this is a special moment with our High Lord of the Spring Court, and I'm going to celebrate it for what it is in their love story.
Well, their love story is not quite there yet, because Feyre does think to herself, quote, High Lord of Prythian, High Lord of Foolery was more like it. I love jaded Feyre.
Lucian giving Feyre the jeweled hunting knife and admitting how he hesitated, and you can tell how bad he feels. He says about the knife, it's yours. Don't bury it in my back, please. I love their platonic relationship so much, and I'm going to have so many words for Feyre in the first stretch of ACOTAR.
Honestly, deserved words. We have different feelings about it, but not great. Not a great look for a girl, Feyre. All right, friends, we are about to begin the Maasverse Madness section of this podcast. But if you have not read any of the other Maasverse, we will be covering both Crescent City and Throne of Glass today, so please keep that in mind. If you have not read either of those series, this is your time to sign off. But first, we have a few reminders for you.
Next episode, we will be covering chapters 19 through 24, aka Calamai. We're so excited. And if you're not already, please give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, do not forget to rate and review the podcast, or like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. And of course, share with your fellow ACOTAR friends.
All right, we are now going to enter our Maasverse Madness segment of the episode, where we call out series crossover references and discuss theories.
If you do not want to be spoiled for both Crescent City, especially House of Flame and Shadow, Crescent City 3, we will be talking about it today, and Throne of Glass, yes, all 7 books, we are lovingly going to tell you to say goodbye, and we will see you again soon, or you can also skip to the outro and the bloopers.
Before we get into the Pool of Starlight theories, I want to point out the small symbols that Feyre notices in the mural. They're part of the contents poured out from the cauldron, and she notes that perhaps there's some ancient fairy language. We learn from House of Flame and Shadow, I'm pausing real quick in case you need to jump off, okay, spoilers incoming, that Midgard and Prythian share the same ancient Old Fae language. When Bryce speaks it, Amarin confirms it hasn't been heard in 15,000 years. I'm guessing this must be the ancient Fae language from way back when in this world.
One thing I do want to say on that note, though, is there are a lot of crossover theories thinking that word marks and this same Midgard and Prythian ancient Fae language are all the same ancient Fae language.
Okay, we're going to summarize several Starlight crossover references and theories. Please do understand that we are only scratching the surface here because there are some deep rabbit holes. Let's look at Crescent City theories first. Number 1, this liquid starlight is a form of first light. Crescent City's Autumn King was researching a very similar liquid to the description we get of starlight. He was studying an iridescent liquid for, quote, how light moves through the world, how it can be shaped.
We do get confirmation that the Daglin in the ACOTAR world are indeed the Asteri in the Crescent City world. The Asteri fed off of first light, and we know that the Daglin drank liquid magic like wine. Put 2 and 2 together, the Daglin drank first light, aka what we call the Pool of Starlight here. So this Pool of Starlight, for lack of a better word, is left over from 15,000 years ago when the Daglin ruled. Or if we know that this starlight is first light, and we know that the High Lord's magic comes from the earth, does that mean on Calamai they're producing first light? quite possibly, or shedding a tiny bit of it. Obviously, it's not like the drop at all, but calamai could be their way of giving a little first light, aka starlight, back into the earth to keep the magic of the land flourishing. Now, theory number 2, connecting the Crescent City world, we're going back to the explanation of Tamlin and Rhys's sister being mates. Remember, the Night Court and the Spring Court are enemies, and they fought on opposite ends of the war. If Tamlin and Rhys's sister were mates, this alliance would have been seen as a threat, because this would have been joining 2 rival courts. Very Romeo and Juliet. Side note, last episode we speculated why Tamlin doesn't use his shape-shifting to make wings. This might be one of the reasons why, because he was so pained by losing his mate. It would also make sense that Tamlin already had a mate, why he never mentioned him and Feyre having a mating bond. He never said that their mating bond would happen for them, and in fact, it's always Feyre who is wanting it to click into place, or wondering when it'll click into place. Little does she know. Back to him and Rhys's sister being mates, though. As a mating present, like Lexi said earlier, Tamlin could have received the Pool of Starlight from Rhys's sister, or also, like Lexi mentioned earlier, Tamlin could have burned the wings here, and that's how the Pool of Starlight emerged. But Nicole, what does this have to do with CC spoilers? Well, because in CC3, when Selene appears in the prison, Azriel says, quote, "She looks like Rhysand's sister." Now, Selene wouldn't be Rhysand's sister per se. Those timelines definitely wouldn't match up, but Selene could definitely be a direct descendant. And Selene was a member of what family line? Yep, the Star-born Fae. So it could make sense that this direct descendant of the Star-born Fae was tied to this Pool of Starlight, whether it was a gift of her mate or her wings being burned on that site. Number 3, some wonder if the Pool of Starlight can seep into the ground and charge certain magical paths. Lexi mentioned earlier how it could be a portal, but let's tie it to both Throne of Glass and for Crescent City. For instance, the magical ley lines of Crescent City or Silba's tomb in the Torre Chesme from Tog would be of similar instances here. But in A Court of Silver Flames, Amren says about the Bog of Urid, quote, "They say the water there flows to under the mountain, and the creatures who live in the bog have long used its underground waterways to travel through the middle, even into the mountains of surrounding courts." So these waterways do exist in Prythian. But this type of source, almost, that first light-esque and feeding into the ground for the Daglin and the Asteri, it could have also been traveling under the waterways to the Hewn City, to whatever is under Ramiel, or to under the prison where one of the Asteries was waiting for 15,000 years, aka the remnants of the Dust Court.
And to keep it going here with Throne of Glass, there is a river in Empire of Storms where Aelin and the crew are on a boat and the caves were, quote, "filled with starlight." There could be very similar magic at play here, maybe not directly connected, but again, those same types of magic, same types of things in these different universes. There's also just the full-blown possibility that the Pool of Starlight is a word gate and portal into these other realms too, not just a portal between Prythian, but to these other realms as a whole.
Well, let us not forget that in Kingdom of Ash, Aelin is shooting across the night sky, across many different portals, and she is supposedly one of the spirits on Starfall. So Starfall, Pool of Starlight, she might have used that as a word. They could all be connected there. I don't know. Oh my God.
All right, that's us just scratching the surface with the Pool of Starlight. Whew. All right, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next episode, we will be covering chapters 19 through 24, aka calamai. Like I said earlier, we're so excited.
Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. This past week especially, we don't know what we could have done without you, my guy.
It's been a week for the Fantasy Fangirls, but all is good now. All is good. Please be sure to sign up for our newsletter. It is free. It is once a month, and it has so many great goodies in it. Also, if you want even more, join the Patreon party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. Also, please be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
While you're on your phone, you might as well rate and review the episode. It takes 2 seconds, and it is one of the most helpful things you can do for your favorite podcasts. Or if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. But the best thing you can do, the most best thing you can do, is share it with your fellow ACOTAR friends. If you have also been wondering what the heck this Pool of Starlight is, but you didn't want to go down 4 hours of Reddit theories, here you go. Silver platter. Share it with your friends.
It's on a starlight platter, if you will.
Starlight. Ooh.
Man, we're delusional at this point. We love you all so much. Bye.
Bye.
Where we're covering chapters 13 through, yes.
That is correct. Frustrated. We need to start doing vocal warm-ups before we start recording.
Feyre.
Okay. Why are words so hard? We're never doing a double recording in a week again.
No, we really are never doing this again.
Breathe, Nicole. I need to breathe for a second.
Effervescent, but effervescent.
Evanescence.
But effervescent with small symbols. Effervescent.
Effervescent.
I need Babbel for English. Wow, look, that word disappeared there. Hold up. A song where it's like, hold up.
Hold up. Grab the wall.
I don't know if that was the same song.
It's not even the right lyrics. 20 minutes in, we got this. Keep prodding. There we go.
Pounding, oh wow. That was attempt really worked.
Oh, moldy, Voldemort style. Moldy, Voldemort. Why did I write that? We get our first My Bowels Turned Watery mention. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. I lost my play.
I have to sneeze.
It's so cute.
Allergies going.
Cassian.
Sorry.
I'm funny.